Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, the presidential candidate of the NNPP. Let me take this opportunity, these 5 minutes, to introduce myself to you. I was born in Kwankwaso, Modogu local government of Kano State. I had my primary education, or I started my education from Kwankwaso Primary School, finished in Rosabodi Primary School, then craft school again, Kano Technical College, Kaduna Polytechnic, where I had my OND and HND. Then in 1981, when I finished my service, I left this country for the UK, where I attended various courses in various institutions and universities. I was in Middlesex Polytechnic. I was in Loughborough University of Science and Technology. I was in Nottingham University, where I had my master's. And after my technical education, I joined RECA. I started in 1975. I rose from an artisan, craftsman, technical officer, then engineer, and I left service in 1991 as a principal water engineer. I then joined politics. In 1992, I was member of the House and elected Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps in 1992. I was an elected delegate to the Constitutional Conference in 1994 to 95. I was Governor of Kano State 1999 to 2003. I was Minister of Defense, then advisor to President Darfur of Somalia. In 2003 to 2007. 2007, I was appointed a representative of the Northwest Geopolitical Zone in the NDDC, where I resigned because of the negative activities in the NDDC then. And 2011, I contested election again and went back to Kano for my second term. In 2015, contested election as a senator representing Kano Central, and of course led the Senate in 2019. In between, I contested in 2015 this same position, presidential position. I lost to President Buhari in Lagos, came second. 2019, I contested with other PDP candidates and lost to Atiku Abubakar. And of course, I contested election in this 30 years, 92 to date, 18 times. Won 15 and lost 3. One sitting governor in 2003, and of course, one in Lagos and one in Port Harcourt. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I had many other opportunities of forming political parties, associations, and so on and so forth. I believe I still have 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. I think this is just for introduction. I think this is where I will stop. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party. Next, I would like to invite the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter. You have 5 minutes.
following on the footsteps of the first speaker, my name is Mr. Peter Obi, born in Nigeria, educated in Christ the King College, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and subsequently have had the privilege of having very extensive trainings overseas, from London School of Economics to Harvard Graduate School, to Kellogg, to Columbia, Oxford University, Cambridge, and in Switzerland. I'm a businessman, I'm a trader, very successful trader who have managed corporations locally and established a successful business in United Kingdom that is of note today. I lived there for 10 years. From there, I chaired companies in Nigeria, served in about 8 quoted companies, different companies, out of which I chaired about 3 of them in Nigeria. Became a governor of my state, served for 8 years. I've had some remarkable things that happened in my transition into politics. I was the first governor to be declared through the courts, because when I contested the election, somebody else was declared, and I went to court and challenged it. And for 3 years, I was declared. 6 months into being governor, I was impeached. I went to court again and challenged the rascality. And I became the second person to come back in this country as the governor from impeachment. And 5 months after that, my tenure again was terminated by an election that was not supposed to exist. And I went back to court and established the tenure of governor, which is what every governor would have struggled in a Nigerian election till date. Without me, the likes of Oshomole, Fayemi, Oribashala, all these will be governors. It was my challenge of that rascality that made it possible for them to go to court afterwards. While as governor, I served as advisor to the president of Nigerian Finance. President Goodluck Jonathan was a member of the economic management team and was the chairman of SEC thereafter. Since after that, I've been involved. In 2019, I was vice presidential candidate to Elijah Atiku Abubakar. Today, I'm contesting Labour. I believe that 2023 is a critical and a crucial year for Nigeria. The government that will be coming in will be faced with the undaunting task of bringing back Nigeria and repositioning it, because it brings of so many daunting situations that requires immediate attention. My commitment is to ensure that we bring a government that will redirect, empower, and govern Nigeria in the way governance is expected all over the world. And that is my commitment. So I thank you for the opportunity of this introduction.
No clapping, no cheers. Please, complete silence in the hall. Let me now invite Mr. Kola Abiola, presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, fellow candidates, presidential candidates here today, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Abdulateef Kolawole Abiola. I am a Nigerian of very humble beginnings. I have equally been humbled by events in my life to date. And I have been not just humbled by that, but I've learned a thing or two in that process. I stand here today as a true Nigerian, one that has employed Nigerians, I mean, part of a group that has employed Nigerians in every state of Nigeria. I also stand here as testimony to what it takes to fight and die for Nigeria. My loyalty, our loyalty to Nigeria is why we are all seated here today. Furthermore, we have a history of giving the young an opportunity to grow. Over the years, we set up establishments, we put in very young greenhorns, and guess what? Today, a lot of them are here today leading a lot of and doing a lot of good things. Our anchor person is one of them, the Duke, everybody, mostly in the journalism today. Well, because we gave a very young bunch of people an opportunity to be themselves and grow. Furthermore, I represent the People's Redemption Party. PRP is a party, it's the oldest party in this country to date. We've had from that stable people like my Honorable Excellency, Kwapanzo from Kano, is also a ex-PDP person. Sorry, ex-PRP, sorry. And we represent ideals. At PRP, we've lived by those ideals for the past 50 years. We believe in the power of the people. We believe the power belongs to the people, and you are elected to serve the people. We've always, we go by example from the late Aminu Kano, for example. We've also been progressives all the way. We've come across, we are the first to build bridges across this country, politically. We were also the first in 1979 to have a female running mate as a candidate with the late Malam Aminu Kano. That was in 1979. We're progressive also in the fact that to date, we are here to represent the future of Nigeria. We are here to be able to bridge the divide. We are here to mentor the young into governance, leadership, and politics for the future. We represent what it takes to be fresh. We represent what it takes to make sure that the ones coming behind us have an opportunity to decide their own destinies in a united Nigeria. For me, as a person, it's very personal. As a party, it's equally personal. Together with my running mate, Haruna Ziko Aziz, we intend to pledge our loyalty to country first and foremost. And everything we'll do is out of that passion to make sure this country becomes what it should be and where it should be. We are appealing, we're here to provide a fresh look at governance from people who have never been excellencies, who haven't held government only at the state levels, Kaduna and Kano. But at the federal level, we're going there with a clean slate. We don't carry the baggages of any administration or any party. And we want to use that to be able to turn Nigeria around and fight for its people. We are here for the people, and for the people. Thank you.
No clapping. Now is the turn of the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, standing in for the candidate of the party, Atiku Abubakar, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta State, vice presidential candidate, People's Democratic Party.
Thank you. Good evening. My very distinguished guests, my colleagues who are here, I want to thank all of us for coming this evening. In the first instance, I stand for Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the PDP. And I'm very much aware that there was a communication to him and he's outside the country, and we duly obtained the permission of the organizers of this program for him to be represented. It's a town hall meeting, and that permission was duly given. And I think that that solves the problems of the agitation that was going on. When it's time for debates, we get into debates, but this time it's a town hall meeting, it's about informing the people. Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the PDP, was vice president 1999 to 2007. He's a successful businessman, and he is also somebody who runs a very successful academic institution, and he believes in this country. Atiku Abubakar has asked me to represent him, and we have a document. my covenant with Nigerians, and it's a common document on behalf of himself, myself, and that of the People's Democratic Party. In the first instance, the issues that we talk about is about the issues of a nation. And I think it is serious business. Whether somebody is a president or a vice president, the ticket is one, and we must take note of that. We must also understand that in moving forward in this nation, it's about collective leadership. And I believe that in this nation, that's what we require. Even beyond the president and the vice president, people who work in government and many other persons who are stakeholders in this nation must play very key roles, particularly the private sector, if we're able to get things right. And Nigerians must begin to rethink the way we ought to. Otherwise, we'll continue to get it wrong. There's no doubt about that. We're in a troubled country. A lot of challenges in the insecurity, and we're talking about that today. There are challenges to the economy, we're talking about that today. But for us to be able to progress on this, we also need to talk about the unity of this country and the need to ensure that we stay as a united nation. Until we're able to truly unite ourselves and begin to think together and realize that we must work collectively together, we may not be able to get through the path that will lead us to new growth. We must take very key note of that. We must also realize that until this nation begins to realize that it is not all about the presidency and the federal government, that until the state governments start to be very participatory and play very key roles in the governance of this nation, we share responsibilities where the federal government and the state government and the local governments are able to come together on the table to think Nigeria in ways that work for Nigeria. We may not be able to develop fast as we think we ought to be. We must realize that until we begin to develop the human capital of this nation, either in terms of education, which is very key, or you're talking about the health services sector, or job creation and the improvement in skills of our people and the entrepreneurship of our young, we may not be getting things right. And we cannot really discuss the economy in full or find ways of getting a secured nation without ensuring that all these things come together and that we process it in such a manner that everything works in a united country where everybody is free to make his contribution, and that we need to begin to run an economy that is more of a private sector-led economy, and where government is supposed to provide the enabling environment for the economy to be revived and to thrive. This is very key. We understand that insecurity is quite a lot in this nation. In fact, a lot of people are not even able to move around anymore on the roads. A lot of people are not able to do what they are supposed to do because of the issues that we find in this country. But the truth is, the Atiku government is committed to securing this nation. We are committed to reviving the economy. We are committed to a united, inclusive country. We are committed to the devolution of powers, and we are committed to ensuring that we pay special attention to human capital development. Thank you.
Well, we've listened to the opening remarks by the candidates. Now, this program is divided into two parts, following the theme for the first in the series of the presidential town hall meetings. Today, we're dealing strictly with security and the economy. And this first segment is about the security. On March 28, I'm asking the first question now. We're going to the next round. There was an incident along the Abuja-Kaduna rail line when a train was attacked, was bombed twice, and at the end of the day, 8 persons lost their lives, many were injured, and over 60 persons were abducted. Since that March 28, the abducted persons were released in batches, causing so much agony for their families, for their friends. There were reports, some had to pay ransom, some had to negotiate, until the first week of September, when the last batch of 23 persons were released. The excuse given by the Buhari administration, please can we have quiet in the hall? Please, who are those people making noise? So, if you were, the explanation given by the Buhari administration was that the government needed to save lives. The government needed to prevent collateral damage. If you were the commander-in-chief, what would you have done? Would you have handled the situation differently? I would like to start with the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi. Each candidate has 3 minutes. Mr. Peter Obi, you have the floor.
Thank you. First, please, those who are trying to,
Please,
people should sit down,
please,
please.
can we have some quiet in the hall? Please, this is a town hall meeting, it's not a debate. Please, can we have some quiet in the hall? Please, will you allow the candidate of the Labour Party to respond to the question that I have just asked? Well, Mr. Peter Obi, maybe the person who was threatening to take you away, maybe when you start speaking, they will calm down and listen to you.
I've asked the people to stop. Let people, please be seated so we can start this.
Please, we had appealed to the supporters of the candidates to please allow this program to continue, and for the candidates to appeal to their supporters to be calm. This is a town hall meeting. The idea is to give the candidates an opportunity to interact across all platforms and to present their proposals and priorities. Well, Mr. Peter Obi, please continue. I hope your supporters will learn to keep quiet once you start
Not my
speaking.
supporters, most of them are even people from civil positions, for people from
Please, can we be allowed to proceed with this program by those persons who are threatening to take their candidate away?
they are not just my supporters. Most of them are people from all this.
Well, Mr. Peter Obi says he doesn't know these people.
No, I didn't say I didn't know them. I didn't say I don't know them. I just said they are not only my supporters. I didn't say so. Not what I
Okay,
said.
fair enough.
Yeah?
Please go ahead, Mr. Peter Obi.
Well,
Please, let's have some quiet in the hall. Please, let's respect the rules of this exercise.
well, let me continue. That
Please go ahead, sir.
first for me is that I believe that there was a failure of intelligence processing. Because before that incident happened, from information available, there were already indications of insecurity within that rail corridor, as well as previous attempts and intelligence that were ignored. So there was a failure of processing and giving due attention to intelligence, which I would have promptly dealt with. Two, when it happened, government action and communication were weak. If I was commander-in-chief, we would have acted swiftly, and throughout that process, would have remained in communication and at least showing consistent empathy to the families of those that are involved. We would have done it differently. And I think that shows the overall need for us to improve the intelligence processing and giving to an immediate response whenever such situation arises. Thank you.
Next, let me invite the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Dr. Rabiu Kwankwaso. You may be seated, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ruben, as former Minister of Defense, I can assure you that the situation wouldn't have been allowed. I am sure you remember that recently we unveiled our blueprint. And in our blueprint, we made it very clear that the number of the military that we have today, which is about 250,000, is grossly inadequate. And therefore, we have made adequate arrangement to have about 1 million military, Army, Air Force, and Navy. And with that, we believe we are going to take over every square meter of our land in this country. Police, 230,000 at the moment. We want to also make it to about 1 million. Put together the SSS, civil defense, and other security agencies, within a very short period of time, we should be able to be in charge of our land. We will be very willing to sit down with anybody with grudges in any part of the country. Our government will sit down with them and dialogue. At the end of the day, anybody who decides to think otherwise, definitely the law will take its course. And that is why we have made a provision that we are going to build facilities, military depots, expand the existing ones, and of course there is a provision in the blueprint to say that even the NYSC, which is of course 1 year will continue, but the provision has been done for those who are interested in joining the military and the other security agencies. Therefore, we will take whatever step is necessary to avoid the position in the first place. But if it happens, of course, we have the experience. During our time, during the Chief Olusegun Obasanjo as president, we have taken necessary action to secure every square meter in this country. In fact, we didn't even stop there. At that time, we were in Liberia, we were in Sierra Leone, we were in Darfur. We have taken all adequate arrangements, not only to secure our land and our people, but certainly our neighbors, and of course, in Africa in general. Thank you, and God bless you.
Next, the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP, Mr. Kola Abiola.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The unfortunate incident at the corridor of the train is just one of many security problems we've had over the years. For me, it goes to show, it's just one of the problems that goes to show the larger problem we have. There's a need to go back and address our security defense architecture. Over the years, there's been a lot of talk about reviewing that, making it get better, but is that really the question? The fact of the matter is that if I'm right, since 1999, the National Security Council has now sat for 1 day, since 1999. And that is the body that governs dispassionately the security situation in Nigeria. That body has not sat since 1999. It's always been us going out of our architecture to run defense and run security. And that's why the whole thing has collapsed to date. We need to go back and address that. We keep talking about faults in the system, but the truth of the matter is that we have never actually implemented the system itself. At PRP, we intend to go back, look at that system, and make it work the way it should work. That's number one. Number two, a lot of us, we tell ourselves, yes, we have a shortfall in security personnel, be it the military, be it the police. But really, if you think back and look at it, and you look at all the structures outside of the police, outside of the security systems we have, by the time you pull them together, you have an immediate manpower that in the short run can solve the problem immediately. By the time you take your national defense force, your national security and defense, NSCDC, you take your DSS, you take all these units, together with your police, you're looking at almost 850 to 900,000 personnel immediately. And that is the way to address the problem. Don't let us go and be reinventing the wheel again. The wheel is there. Put a tube or have a tubeless or put a roll flat. The tire is the tire. Let us go and look at what we have. Make sure it works the way it should work, and stop inventing extrajudicial processes to man our security. And that's where the cause of the problem is. And also, we need to go back and look at the welfare of our personnel. You think you solve that, you solve a lot of security we have in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, let me invite Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, standing in for presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party.
Thank you, Ruben. I think actually we need a very coordinated intelligence gathering, and we must also find ways of operationalizing it in such a manner that all the state agencies are able to have a shared intelligence and to also work collectively for the collective good of Nigeria. That apparently is not happening at the moment. I'm a governor and I can see and I see what's going on. So we need to ensure that there's a coordinated arrangement among the security agencies. There is also no doubt that with the level of insecurity, it's not that train incident is just one. There are several instances across Nigeria taking place at the same time. So obviously we need more boots on the ground. There's no doubt about that. That will definitely require more persons. But the approach to it with the pen, yes, add some more. But in the medium term, we must be looking at evolving the police force such that the states should be able to have their own police and operationalize their own police. It's very important because these people, because they are working within their own environment, are in a better position to have a clearer understanding of their areas and to know exactly what to do at every point in time. Before, people thought of several other things, but as of today, it's obvious that a lot of people are calling for it because just one centralized police force is not able to attend to all the issues that we have. Ordinarily, the military should not be involved in all these things. It's because of the pressures that have called up the military into what we're doing at the moment. But on the long run, I'm not ready to comment on whether Buhari was right or not. because the real issue is that we are not privileged to have the information that he has at the moment. But whether it was necessary to go in and do a kinetic approach, that could definitely cause a collateral damage. There's no doubt about that. But I think that we need to ensure that we're able to prevent these things from happening. But as of today, Nigeria is being overwhelmed. We need more boots on the ground, but we need greater training. We also need to ensure that we provide adequate welfare and make the police force and other agencies, make them more comfortable with a better pay than what they are getting at the moment. This is definitely very important. Then we must attack the issues of unemployment, and we must ensure that we educate our children. Until we get this two done, there will be a lot of people on the streets that will be recruited into this very deadly insecurity situation that we find ourselves. I think it's important we address those issues.
Okay, at this point, we'll now go to our panelists. After the panelists, we'll go to the audience. Questions in the hall. We'll also be getting feedback from social media. And please, the people in the audience, when the microphone comes to you, make the questions short, simple, straight to the point. No double-barreled, no triple-barreled questions. And you identify yourself and who your question is meant for. At this point, let me invite the panelist who is here with us in this hall, Dr. Jibrin Ibrahim of the Center for Development and Democracy, to ask the candidates his question. Dr. Ibrahim. Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you for accepting to participate in this town hall. I'm a member of the Center for Democracy and Development, the civil society organization partnering with Arise News. Over the last 8 months, we've been doing extensive research with bandit terrorists in the Northwest. We've been able to trace a lot of their leaders and talk to them. And we've asked them, why are you killing Nigerians, kidnapping Nigerians, engaged in rape and such evil acts? And their response is very interesting. They say we live in a society where you have people in power who use security forces of the nation for their own personal interests, steal and loot the treasury and are protected because they have power. And therefore, the sets of activities we are engaged in, they tell us, is very similar. The four of you are all people who have spent decades in power in this country. If you meet one of these bandit leaders and he challenges you by telling you there is no difference between us and you, what would you respond?
Okay, let's start with the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, Mr. Kola Abiola, and in that fashion, I'll go from my right to my left.
Thank you, sir. Well, for one, I'm not in that group, for sure. I represent a fresh outlook. I've never been in governance. I've never been in excellency. I've never ran for governor, state chairman, local government council. But that's not so much the point. The point is that we've tried, the leadership has tried over the years, so many recycled and different people every time. They either stay in one party or they join parties. But for the first time, we have a party here in PRP that hasn't been there, hasn't been in a party. Neither have I or the vice presidential candidate been in any party at all, that wants to come and let us try a fresh hand at solving the Nigerian problem. Now, security is an issue, but it all stems from leadership. And that is why unfortunately, the Office of the National Security Advisor is the most underutilized office in this country today, especially in this administration. We're not coordinating our security the way it ought to be done. That's one. Two, it's all about the economy at the end of the day. If things work and where youth are employed and there's an opportunity as a hope, I think we will not be in the position in which we are today. Now, the biggest problem we have is what you just said. The way I interpret what you said, sir, is that the common person in Nigeria, the average person in Nigeria, has not seen or felt the present, majority of them haven't felt the present or seen government. They have no faith in that government, and that is why the security has collapsed, because they believe that the governance and the government are just about the same when it comes to being reckless. Now, the point here I'm making, sir, is that if you have a scenario where in the old days, your information starts from your rural to your local chief, the chief to your to your DPO, and so on and so forth. Now they don't have faith walking up to their chiefs to say, look, there's a stranger in town. They don't believe, they have no faith in the security of this country because they equally don't have faith in the leadership of this country. And for as long as you have that gap of trust, we will never solve that security issue. Before any stranger that comes to town is reported, they know. You can't buy a land anywhere in the past without having the chief sign off on it to know who you are. All that has broken down now. And that's why, for fear of reporting someone, and the same police you came to report will come and hunt you, the trust is gone because they believe, because the leadership is also seen as being one and the same with the bandits. So there's a time to change that and try something new.
Please remember, the time allotted for the response is just 3 minutes each. Now your turn, candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party. Dr.
Thank you very
Abiola
much.
Kwankwaso.
I believe that those who are angry, if they see me, they will hardly ask such question, because I am also an angry person. Angry for many obvious reasons. Even though anger should not justify terrorism, criminality, and so on. But I want to tell you that unlike him, I have been in the system for a very long time. I was in the civil service in Kano for 17 years, and for the last 30 years, I have been in the system either at the state or at federal. But I have done what was necessary really to convince them and convince anybody who cares to know what we have done. And it is because of those reasons that some of us are angry to the extent of leaving the PDP and even the APC, because we feel there are better ways of doing things in this country. We believe the system has failed. And that's why we have decided to go to New Nigeria People's Party, the unscratched party in this country. And the security and economy, I'm happy we took these two, but we cannot separate them. And we cannot even separate them with other areas like health, like education, like agriculture, and so on. It is the failure of those areas that resulted in insecurity that we see today, and even the issue of the economy. So I believe that if government is doing the right thing, many people do down their arms. Those who can, for whatever reason, refuse to do that, it is the responsibility of government to ensure that necessary steps are taken within the bracket of the law to ensure that each and every Nigerian lives in peace and goes around doing their legitimate businesses, not minding the religion, not minding the ethnicity, not minding the north and south. Commander-in-chief is commander-in-chief. He must bring the country even under any condition within the bracket of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and, of course, the law. We have done it in Kano. Kano is the most peaceful state now in the north and even in this country. It has to do with what we put in the place in those days. 8 years I was governor of Kano and as chief security officer. Thank you very much.
Next, the candidate of the Labour Party, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi.
Thank you. Like you, I've been able to go around or off-source, met some of those criminals as well. And based on that, I've always said consistently that the more you pull people out of poverty, the more you reduce the criminality that is in the country. And I've always argued that they are doing what they are doing because if you see the poverty in the country, in a country where those people are in government are richer than entrepreneurs to manufacture poverty. But if they stop me and ask me, like you said, what will I tell them? I'll tell them, well, as a governor, I served a state for 8 years, and you can go to that state and see not one day did I ever borrow from any financial institution in Nigeria. And that I was not in any position or have never been invited by anybody to question about their missing money. The day I left office, I wasn't owing any contractor that have delivered this project. I wasn't owing any supplier that have delivered. I was not owing pension, gratuity, salary, or anybody. And I can say that in 3 banks in Nigeria, Access Bank, Fidelity Bank, and Diamond Bank, I left in each $50 million, over $10 billion for the state. So if they meet me, I'll be able to account myself and say, I've never borrowed, I've served faithfully, and I left their money. So I'm like them, I'm as angry as they are. That we must be able to chase out those who, where they've passed, nobody can account of what they were given. That is all we want to do. Thank you.
Next, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, standing in for PDP presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that from 1999 to 2007, we knew where the President Obasanjo Atiku Abubakar presidency, where they met Nigeria and where they left it. Much better than where they met it. Because after the military regime, we knew exactly how they were able to re-engineer the economy and also ensure that we even were able to pay back a lot of our debt, and we had debt forgiveness. And a lot of the things that we enjoy today, and even the institutions that ensure accountancy, were actually created in their own time. So that is very important. Secondly, it's important to address the issue of poverty. Yes, the issue of unemployment. It's important to educate our people. It's important that we start to manage our populations. This is very important, and these are things that we need to drive down. But if I were to have the opportunity of sitting down with them, is to let them know that there is hope for Nigeria going into the future. In my state, Delta State used to be very troubled, especially in the oil-producing areas. It was always a place of constant agitation. But we took development to them. We recreated the economy. We grew. We have continued to grow entrepreneurs. If you go into the riverine areas of Delta State today, you see a lot of development. They now have livable towns, and the people are convinced, and they can see hope, and they are partnering with government. And it's important to ensure that we drive governance in this step. I don't want to know whether I don't want to believe that in the midst of scarcity and infrastructure deficit, that what we need to do is to continue to leave money in governance. I don't think that's the pathway to go, because it's only man when people don't have roads to fly on, when the educational system is still in shambles, when the health sector is in trouble, and you say you have excessive money in this country at this time to continue to save it, when the money is depreciating by the day, that's not the right path to go. The right path is to ensure that you use the money for the development of the people, to create entrepreneurs, to create jobs for the people, to create the enabling environment for industries to grow. This is the right thing to do. So we must be cautious, the kind of language you pass on to Nigerians. When you're talking about developed clients, it's different because they've gone through all this, so they are going through, they have monies that they can save. But at the moment, in a depreciating situation, you can't continue to save when that money is needed to grow the economy and to make the people have livable conditions. So it's important that we are careful about the narratives that we pass on to Nigerians.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we'll go to our Lagos studio, where we have our second panelist. Now joining us is Mr. Bismarck Rwani, CEO and Chairman of Financial Derivatives. Mr. Bismarck Rwani, if you can hear me, would like to bring you in. This segment of the program is devoted strictly to security. Mr. Rwani, please. Hello?
Yes. Thank you, Madam. Talking about security, can you hear me clearly, Ruben?
Yep. We go then straight to the audience before we come back to the panelists. As I said earlier on, the rule for members of the audience, since this is a town hall meeting interactive session, is to please keep your questions simple and direct, and please no political rhetoric, no double-barreled questions, no triple-barreled questions. We will go first. We have people in the hall with microphones. You step forward, identify yourself, and then please ask your question and direct it to whoever you want.
Good evening, everybody, distinguished guests. I stand on protocols. My name is Dr. Makri. I am interested in the security. For those that are interested in becoming president, and for even the APC party in power, other countries use aerostats to identify where our enemies are. Are any of you have any plans on how you're going to go about with the insurgency? The question is open to any of you, as opposed to talking about security problems. I really want to know how will you go about if you're in the situation that we are in now under APC. I've given an example of aerostats. America uses it, England uses it. It identifies where the criminal is right now. I don't want to go on too long because other people have questions. Thank you.
Okay, you don't have a particular person in mind, Mrs. Amakri. Okay, is there any of the candidates who will volunteer to take that question? You have just 1 minute each, otherwise we go from one person to the other. I see Dr. Ravi Koma, so we'd like to take that.
Madam, thank you very much. You see, in security, technology is very critical. And not only that, some of us who are extended family members of the security in this country are very much worried, concerned, and sometimes even ashamed that today, in 2022, security agencies could not identify locations, especially everybody in this country, including the criminals, are using telephones. And these telephones are not too difficult to identify. And these are the problems. In Kano, for example, when I was in government, we constructed roads and, of course, gates leading into the city. And the idea was to put cameras, to put scanners, so that anybody going into that city should be checked and ensure that he or she does not carry anything. And I want to say that even the technology to see us as we are sitting here, we don't have to use complicated communication or whatever system for you to check every square meter, not only in Nigeria, but across the world. So for effective security, we use men, we use IT, we use everything under the sun to secure our indigenous or our people living within the borders of this country. Thank you very much.
The time allotted for this segment is just 1 minute. Mr. Peter Obi, would you like to make a contribution?
Well, as governor, everybody knew what we did in community leadership. We were able to, using what we can call modern communication, using telephone and everything, to provide for every community a vigilante system that was working, provided them with vehicles, communication equipment, linking them to work with police. And you can go and see, we are the only government that had every community was provided with pick-up manpower that were paid directly by government. Thank you.
Mr. Kola Abiola, candidate of the People's Redemption Party.
Yes, please. I think many things we do, we put the cart before the horse. Like I said earlier on, the infrastructure is there. In many cases, you should go to the command headquarters there and go and see that the command room they have there. It's state of the art. But does it function? No. Do they have the manpower that understands how to use it? No. The same thing in just about every security agency we have today. It's all about not just recruiting the right person, but also continue to do and train. It's training, training, training. The machinery, the technology is there to use. In many cases, they are on ground. We just don't utilize them for whatever reasons we have. And that speaks to the kind of leadership we have, not just in our forces, but also at the helm of government. Thank you.
Now, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, standing in for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party.
There's no doubt that technology is very important and will continue to require it much more than we have at the moment. The security equipment that we have in this country are very few. I'm sure that if you go to the police command now, such instruments and equipment that can identify criminals right to the spot, you probably will just have 1 or 2 for the entire nation. That definitely is inadequate. We need to rework the security approach. There's no doubt about that. But as to the use of technology, it's very important, it's very critical, both for operations and also for intelligence gathering. There's no doubt about that. But we also need that the men on the booths must be properly trained, probably well-resourced, well-paid, and committed to their job. And the only way to get committed to their job is to have the required level of condition of service that makes them happy enough to be able to commit themselves to their nation.
Okay, now we'll take more questions from the audience. Who is next? Please step forward, your name and your question, and please make it brief.
Good evening, distinguished gentlemen and ladies. My name is Dr. Joseph Danley Obieche, the National President of Foundation for Correction of Moral Decadence. I have, before I ask my question, I have a goodwill advice, briefly.
No statements.
Okay. The 2 major qualifications our leaders need is 1, have the fear of God and love for humanity. Quickly to the question. This country that is so highly blessed and bountiful has been totally eradicated, reduced to the mud. There is no doubt about it. Now, my question goes to you, Your Excellency, Dr. Peter Obi. Peter Obi, how are you going to address this issue that is so endemic? As a matter of fact, I'm almost going gaga. It's not normal to be normal in such an abnormal situation no more. How will you address this very endemic issue of Namu Namune, Awalokon, and Mugolu? It's so endemic. We're not moving forward with that. How will you address that issue? I know that you're the kind of man that will rescue, rehabilitate, reunify. And lastly, very importantly, I know you are the kind of person that will reorient the mindset of our
statements. No political statements. Quiet in the hall. Quiet in the hall. No clapping, no noise from the hall. Mr. Peter Obi, he directed the question. Well, he said, how will you deal with a particular challenge that he has identified?
Well, I don't know how to start answering. I don't think there was a question, but let me just make this point very clear. Maybe I've had the opportunity now to address one thing. When Jibril asked me a question, I didn't make a comment about what I'll answer if I was stopped by criminals. That was your question. Thank you. But let me also put it a point that when I left office by only one measure of development as at that time was Millennium Development Goals. By United Nations and Nigeria federal government, which is party I don't be, run by party I don't belong, I was number one. I was number one in education, I was number one in health, I won the Bill Gates Prize. Federal government of Nigeria gave me the award for having the best road network in Nigeria. So, but that is aside. So saving money was an addition of excellent performance. You can go and verify. But that's notwithstanding.
Quiet in the hall.
What we're here to do today, I've said before, on the comment he made, do not vote for Peter Obi because I'm from the southeast, or because I'm an Igbo man, or because I'm a Christian, or because of any condition, or it's my turn. It's turn of Nigerian youth and women. It is nobody's turn. I want you to vote for Peter Obi because I'm qualified, because I'm competent, and I know what I can do to put this country out of the brink. That is what I'm contesting on. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Obi having taken his turn there with the microphone. Well, the other candidates will also have their turn. But going forward, please remember, this segment is devoted strictly to security. And the question should fit within the framework. Mr. Kolabiola, your turn.
Yeah, security or not, I guess I'll answer the question. The fact is this: you have to vote for somebody who actually is a Nigerian and seem to be a Nigerian to give Nigeria the hope it requires.
How do you mean?
It doesn't matter whether you're north, south, east, Christian, Muslim, you have to be a Nigerian first and foremost. You have a loyalty to country. But more importantly, you have to have loyalty to the generation that's coming behind. The older ones have used up our time. My own set is in the dead zone. And we're here to bridge the difference, to give them an opportunity to have an equal employee Nigeria. That is what you vote for. You vote for the future of Nigeria by voting for PRP. That is what it's all about. It's not about sentiment. It's about who can do this. Who can do this? Not what I have done and not done right. And then somebody comes and tells you, oh, no. Those numbers were fake, or you left this, you didn't do that. What is it about Nigeria that you want to do for your youth? That's what we're all about here. And please, that's what you vote for. Thank you.
Dr. Rabi Ukwankwaso, presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's
Thank you very
Party.
much.
1 minute, sir.
Well, yes, you see, I think the gentleman shouldn't worry himself. The constitution of this country has taken care of that. Any presidential candidate that came out to the face of ethnicity, tribe, religion, region, he has lost the election even before the election. The Constitution says
Quiet in the hall.
very clearly
Please remember
that
the
for
rules.
you to win an election, you have to have the highest number of votes. That is one. Secondly, and more importantly, to address this issue, you have to have 2/3 or 25% in the 2/3 which is 24 states. North cannot win election on its own. South cannot win election on its own. Hausa man, Igbo man, Yoruba man. My belief is that gentleman should not worry himself. The constitution which I participated in drafting, which is the 1999 constitution, has taken care of that. So whether you say Namu, you only belong to one tribe. Namu, you only belong to one region or one religion. So that's the position of the constitution. So you shouldn't worry. I'm not even worried. Thank you very much.
Please, quiet in the hall. Please, we may declare no clapping, no cheers, no jeers. Please, let's keep this completely dignified. Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, your turn.
The gentleman talked about love for humanity, and I believe that is very instructive, and I believe that most presidential candidates have that clearly in their mind. On the issue of a pan-Nigerian that we're looking out for, of course, in the People's Democratic Party, that was what we saw from the beginning, and we decided we're not going to zone the presidency, and that any Nigerian who is best fitted should be allowed to emerge at the convention. We had a very critical primary, and our presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar did emerge. The important thing is that we must think about Nigeria, continue to unify Nigeria, because that's a pathway to solving the insecurity in this country, and we must think about running a very inclusive government in which every agitation that we see, we must look into it. Those that we need to attend to as a result of political dialogue, we need to do that. Whereas those issues that are involved with criminality, we deal with it by the law. Once you're able to set your goals right and to follow it rightly, I'm sure that we'll be able to get Nigeria right again.
Okay, we take one more question from the hall. Who is going to take the microphone?
Good evening, fellow countrymen and women. My name is Dino Melai. My question this evening is to former Governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, and the question is straightforward. With the uncoordinated security network among the security agencies today, and the lack of proper coordination between the office of the president and the vice president, do you, as presidential candidate of Labour Party, believe that the office of the president and vice president is one and same or not? Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's a town hall meeting. Mr. Peter Obi, I see that you want to take that first. Mr. Peter Obi, candidate of the Labour Party.
The office of the president and the office of the vice president is not the same. There's a commander-in-chief. The button stops at somebody's desk. He can, of course, delegate that power. That is why when the president travels, we talk about transition. The vice president cannot is not commander-in-chief. In terms of coordination, they should work as a family. They should work together. But as president and commander-in-chief, the decision and the board stops on my desk. I will be responsible to Nigerians. That is my vice president.
Quiet in the hall, please.
That is my vice president will be working very closely with me. That even the constitution have areas where he delegated the vice president to head. It didn't say he's commander-in-chief. So I'll be in charge. And I will not...
Please, no noise from the hall.
But that notwithstanding, everybody in government, like the Governor Okowa has said, has to work as a family. A family doesn't mean that you don't have a head. A family, the father is the head, but it's still a family. And they live together. So we will be a family, but I will be in charge.
Please respect the rules of engagement. No cheers, no clapping, no cheers, please. This is fairly straightforward to understand. Senator Dr. Pampa, so.
Thank you very much. Now, for the purposes of what happened earlier on here, I believe that there is always supposed to be a synergy between the president, vice president, governor, deputy governor, and so on and so forth. When a gentleman came and asked me whether he should, the representative of Nigeria should stay, I said he should stay. Why? Because, you see, we have very limited time now for campaigns. And we have so many invitations from so many organizations for debates, for town hall, for this and that and so on. No candidate can boast of saying, I will attend all of them. And for purposes of respect, I believe there is need for meetings like this to accept representative. And I think that is the position. That's how I see it. It's very important. Whichever group that is having this sort of thing should accept. Somebody who is abroad, I think the man sitting here is better than the person who did not come or send any representative. Thank you very much.
Please, quiet in the auditorium. Please, let's respect the rules. Let's respect the rules. Can we have some quiet? Okay, next, Mr. Kola Abiola, presidential candidate of APR.
Yes, thank you very much. In the same vein, His Excellency, when all that was going on, I consulted with my Vice President also. And our own take on this was that, look, you know what, we're here, it's better to have representation than no representation at all. And let's get this thing going. But more importantly, I think also the organizers must respect their own rules also to avoid this kind of situation. If you put the rules there, enforce them. Many a times you make the rules, you never stick by them, and you change them to suit other parties. I think that is totally wrong. There must be a total level playing field. So let's avoid this going forward.
Be quiet in the hall.
Let's avoid this going forward. Thank you.
Please, let's be quiet in the hall. Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of the People's Democratic Party.
Hello. There's no doubt that in the presidency is one, but there's no doubt that there is a commander-in-chief. That is not controvertible. But concerning the issue that took place tonight, I read the letter of invitation to my presidential candidate. It did not clearly state that you cannot be represented. Obviously, it was not. I read it. And we also called to confirm whether he could be represented. And we were asked to go ahead that he could be represented because he was overseas. And I think that settles that matter. But the presidency must work as one. And I thank all the participating persons here because they understand that very clearly. And we must understand that there is a need for people to pull along together. If the president can transmit power to the vice president, it means that vice president has that power at some point in time. Thank you.
Please, no clapping, no jeers. Please. Okay, at this point, I have questions from the Nigerian Guild of Editors, who are our partners in presenting this program. And the questions are as follows. I'm going to take all three. One, are you taking votes away from the All Progressives Congress so that we can have a political deadlock situation? Is that your plan? Two, Peter Obi, are you also trying to take votes away from the People's Democratic Party in order to create a deadlock in the 2023 presidential election? And in both cases, and this is directed to all the four persons who have been addressing us since we started this program, in both cases, what will each party do? Who would like to go first? I know there are 2 pointed questions. The third one is a general one for all the 4 persons on stage. You want to respond to that first, Mr. Peter Obi? Okay, Dr. Rado Kwankwaso.
Thank you very much. You see, there are so many Nigerians who still don't understand the way we operate. NNPP is not taking votes from either APC or PDP. NNPP is taking votes from both parties, that is one. Secondly, people who are not voting at all, or people who are just to start voting in 2023. I'm happy to say today, based on our understanding, NNPP is the only growing party. The 2 parties, based on our own analysis, have nothing to tell Nigerians that is new. And this, my brother, who I believe is going to speak next, please hold Southeast very well. You have to do a good job for our party and for Nigerians. Thank you very much.
Please, quiet in the hall, quiet in the hall. Please, please remember you are on live television. You are on live television. People are watching at home. They will see you, that you don't respect rules. So when you are told repeatedly to please maintain dignified silence as the candidates speak, well, you are being shown on live television. And people will see you and remind you that you couldn't keep to the rules. Mr. Peter Obi, candidate of the Labour Party.
Well, we're not trying to take away votes from any party. Labour Party is in this election to win and serve Nigeria. Our voters were taking votes away from the traditional parties who have structures, which is structure of incompetence, structure of bad leadership, structure of criminality, looting of Nigeria, and bringing us to a level where we become a failed state. So we are saying to Nigerians, especially the younger ones, come, let's take back Nigeria and take it with people you can trust. Election, what we are selling is trust. Of all these candidates, who will you trust that can manage this country and your resources well?
Okay. Mr. Kola Abiola, presidential candidate of the PRP.
Thank you.
What will you do? Will these parties take votes one way or the other? And who are you taking votes away from?
I'm a non-believer in taking votes. I'm going to, PRP, we're going to earn our keep. And how do we do that? We're beginning to not vote for the party, but vote for the future, vote for your country. That's what we're all about. Now, I believe collectively that this next election will have the highest number of voter turnout in the history of this country. And that's why we have 3 new parties basically going against the 2 established parties. And those established parties, their days are numbered for sure. We don't have to take their votes. They have lost their support base because they have failed woefully. Now, what is going to happen further is that a lot of us are this, that of those same parties. So for once, you have a fresh option to pick from. And that is what I expect the Nigerian youth and the Nigerian public to vote for. And that's PRP. Thank you.
Well, your turn,
I'm aware that the PDP is strong in all the 6 political zones, very strong, and strong in all states. That is a statement of fact, and we are busy campaigning to Nigerians based on our manifesto and the credibility of the persons who are on the ticket of the party. Secondly, as of the last time I checked, In 2019, I'm sure, Peter Obi was vice presidential candidate to Atiku Abubakar. He said he paid a lot of glowing tributes to Atiku Abubakar. And as of the last time I checked, up to May 24th, 2022, he was still an aspirant under the PDP. So he cannot claim to be strange to the PDP or strange to the past. It is wrong to present that kind of situation to Nigerians. I think it's important that we begin to address issues the way they were. As for my brother, Dr. Rabi Kwapansoro, I thank you for your comments. But as the last time that I checked, apart from little issues that we're having in Kano, you are still in the PDP and the leader of the PDP. And you have been part of the PDP. Are you now telling Nigerians that you contributed to the destruction that you claim is happening in this nation? Too many good things came in from the PDP. 1999 to 2007. Let's take note of that. It's important that we educate Nigeria.
Thank you. Well, now, before we move on to the next segment of the program, I'd like to go back to our panelists. You recall that earlier on, I had asked him to ask his second question. And now he's back in the hall. Dr. Jibrin Ibrahim of the Center for Development and Democracy. Dr. Ibrahim, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I've listened to your responses on security, and some of you have emphasized the inadequate numbers in terms of our security forces. And you are proposing to raise the numbers, double, triple, quadruple. Is that good enough? I'm raising this question because the last I heard from the chairman of the National Peace Commission, General Abdul Salam, there are at least 6 million arms in the hands of young Nigerians. So if it's a question of numbers, all your propositions will not meet that number. What they suggest is that any solution to the security dynamics that we are in must go beyond the question of numbers. What do you propose that goes beyond numbers?
Okay, who wants to take it first? I see Mr. Akola Abiola of the PRP taking the microphone. This guy.
Thank you, sir. I think you hit the nail on the head, sir. Like I said earlier on, it's about the security architecture of Nigeria. Like I said earlier on, that architecture has never been utilized to date. What we have done is to build outside of that to deal with our security situation. What I'm saying what we say in PRB is to go back to that original setup and make it work. Do not duplicate, make it work. Like I said earlier on, we have a National Security Council that hasn't sat since 1999, not once. And that body is made up of 8 people who are supposed to govern dispassionately our security in this country, including the procurements. Now, what we've had is a situation where each party goes out and does its own. One party decides to corner Mr. President and show him what he wants to hear and what he wants to listen to. Many are trying to see Mr. President call his service chiefs to come and give him the brief. Are they going to tell him that what they have been hasn't been working or what? What we are proposing here is to look at that structure, make it do what it should do, number one. Number two, what we are proposing, sir, is to take our units, bring them under one umbrella. We have a National Security Advisor's Office that is totally underutilized today. That is a party to that National Security Council that has never ever done much but to work in isolation. And you cannot work security in isolation. 8 heads are better than one. And what we are saying is that let them come together, coordinate that as the Office of National Security to make that difference. And then when you take all these units, all these paramilitary units and all these extra structures outside of the architecture, bring them under the same umbrella, you will get at least 850 to 900 standing, already trained security personnel in the very shortest time. Now, all we have to do is equip them properly and provide their welfare and take care and shut down the corruption going on in the system today. The corruption going on in the system is a big problem, and it can continue that way because the council, the National Security Council itself, hasn't started to do what it should be doing. We will go back to that. We will cut out all that fat, all the procurements and all that under that umbrella and let that council do what it should do. It's in the Constitution of Nigeria. It should be utilized because it's in our Constitution. Now, if you take that 800 and put them to training, give them get their welfare taken care of, equip them in the shortest possible time, you will solve this problem and add the technology to it. And make that technology serve. If you have a 2 million standing army that is not well equipped or trained, I don't have the equipment or the technology to make it work, it's a failure. If you have a state police that are going to replicate exactly what you have in the center in 36 states, it's a failure. Use what is here in the immediate and let us get our security situation solved. Go back to local government intelligence gathering. I served in Zaire. I went to the emir then on his emirate tour, and I saw how governance at that level was done. We need to bring those things back to give security and confidence to the people. Thank you.
Okay, the time allotted for this segment, because the question came from our panelists, is 3 minutes. Thank you, Pam. Please note. Next, let me invite Dr. Abi Kwamoso.
Thank you, Ruben. You see, the answer is replicate what we have done in Kano and what we have done in the Ministry of Defense. What I said earlier on had to do with the Ministry of Defense. To us, security is not just the issue of police, SSS, army, and so on, or guns and bombs. Security means a package, complete package. Education security, food security, the economy itself, health security, and so on, even infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Unless you do that, you continue to have problems. I remember what we have done in Kano. In the entire state, during my last term, there was no child of primary age that did not get a place in primary school. There was no child of secondary school age who passed the exam and could not go up to the secondary and the tertiary institution itself. Provide for agriculture, provide for infrastructure, bring the people together, unite them. We had so many programs and projects to the extent that everybody was busy and everybody is happy. We were able to bring synergy between the military, the police, the SSS, the civil defense, and so on and so forth. They are working together, and we are still working together in Kano. That foundation today is working in Kano State. And that is why today I'm happy to say, despite all the weaknesses of administration that we have today in Kano, security is still good. That area, nobody can take it away. And I remember when I was Minister of Defense, I was in charge, I was the chairman, the national chairman of collecting all these small arms, as we call them. We were collecting them. That time, security was really sound. Now we hear even from governors. Governors are saying everybody should go and arm himself because they realize they have failed. So under that failure, what they do is to create another failure. If all of Nigerians are taking arms, then it becomes an even more serious crisis. I think government must think about that. I believe this is the time the Commander-in-Chief should take charge, even between now and 29th of May, when he is going and the party is also going out of the villa. So I believe something got to be done now, and that is when we want something to be done. And I believe in that we'll have no problem in this country. I believe Nigerians are good people, both south, north and south, Christian and so on. And that is why we find so many things. Negatives are happening in the country, but people are still moving, are still praying that one day we will get a good and strong leadership that will bring peace and stability and unity among all Nigerians. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Peter Obi, candidate of the Labour Party.
Mr. Jibril, what is weird is that you have 6 million people with guns outside and you have less than that. That supports the need, one, for a complete review of your security architecture, starting with increasing the personnel. Police, to the best of my knowledge, is 320,000. For a country of 200 million, it's unacceptable. If you compare with Egypt, at 100, they are 1 million. So let's increase that to at least 1 million. And then I support issue of local government, state, 3-level policing. Thereafter, the most important thing to stop and reduce that criminality is to start pulling those people out of poverty. The more you pull people out of poverty, the more you reduce criminality. There's a lot you can have today all over Nigeria. You have 35% unemployment. With your youth, who are in their productive age, we have 50% youth unemployment. Youth unemployment. You can't have that and you have crisis. That's where the guns are domiciled. So you replace that with job. Replace it with employment. Replace it with entrepreneurship. You invest in your micro, small businesses where these youths are domiciled by supporting them, pulling them out of poverty. I've advocated that the goal of Nigeria in terms of physical access is your cultivated land in the north. We can have that huge land, and we have the level of poverty that we experience in the north. And I've given examples with so many countries of the world where things have worked differently. Niger State has 8 local governments, or about 7 or 8 local governments that is occupied by bandits. And they are living on 76,300 square kilometers of land. It's unacceptable. Unoccupied land that is fertile. When Netherlands, if you minus water, it's 33,000. And if you go there, their last year export of food was over 100 billion euros, which as at that time was about $120 billion. If Niger State can do just 2% of that, for the land space they have, 2.5 times their land, they earn about $2.4 billion. Even at 650, let's leave 800 today, it's about 1.5 trillion. Imagine what Niger State will be. Those kids, those local governments will not be taken over by bandits. Fact checkers, I hope they're checking.
Quiet in the hall. Now, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa standing in for PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar.
I do agree with Dr. Rabi Kakwanso and Peter B that there is a need to resource our youths and our women, not just youths alone, and our women. There's a need to tackle education. There's the need for skill acquisition programs. There's a need for entrepreneurship programs to get people out of poverty and to create employment, because government cannot provide all the resource. There's the need for a private sector-led economy, but you have to take people out so that those going to criminality will be left. But the issue is that he's talked about so many arms. So how are the arms coming in? So through intelligence, we need to find out how the arms are coming in, our porous borders through the seas, and find ways to put in stop to further arms coming into the country. It's important. Those arms that are already in the country through intelligence and technology, and also community intelligence, not only just what you have from the federal state level. We should be able to get adequate information that enables us to start to mop up arms. And when it is necessary, like it was done in the Niger Delta, if there's a need to cause people to surrender their arms and to find a pathway to recreating their lives, it was done during the Yar'Adua's regime, then we have to toe that path to be able to ensure that those youths that are into criminal activities are retrained. But that requires a lot of training, because training of the mind and training of the hands, that is quite important.
Okay, thank you very much. Candidate of the People's Redemption Party, candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, candidate of the Labour Party, and Governor Ifeanyi Okowa standing in for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. At the beginning of this segment, I made it clear that our digital partners for this program come from Premium Times newspaper. And they have a four-man team on the ground, and they've been following some of the claims, and now it is their turn to make their observations, to point out where there are errors of fact, and then the candidates, each person will have the opportunity to respond very quickly. So may I now invite the team lead of the fact checkers, Mr. Taiwo Azan Adebayo, to take the microphone and present his report. Taiwo Azan Adebayo, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abate. Yeah, we are just going to start with Mr. Peter Obi, who has just challenged us. Yeah, so his last claim, factual claim, was that the Egypt police force population is more than 1 million. You are actually correct. You are correct. So according to official sources, that's correct. Yeah, more than 1 million. Yeah.
Please quiet in the auditorium.
Yeah. Then, so Mr. Kola Abiola, he repeatedly made a claim that the National Security Council has sent Met since 1999. That's not correct. Multiple reports show that under various presidents, President Obasanjo, Goodluck Jonathan, and before him, Yaradua and Buhari, the latest city being October 14. Yeah, so the NSA, the National Security Council, has been meeting. So the verdict for that is false. Yeah. Then Mr. Peter Obi claimed that he was awarded the best governor in Nigeria in the health sector. No, that you actually didn't see MJJ. Yeah. Okay, so by Bill and Melinda Gates.
Please let's allow the fact checker to do its work.
Reports we have show that
thereafter the candidates will have an opportunity to respond.
On July 30, Mr. Obi was awarded the best performing governor on the eradication of polio in the southeast geopolitical region by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the award was presented by then Minister of State for Health, Mohamed Pathé, with a cash prize of 120 million naira. So that's what we actually got immediately. Yeah, thank you. Then Mr. Rabiu Musa Kwakwaso claimed that Nigeria's military has 250,000 personnel.
Please, let's allow the fact checker to give his report.
Well,
the candidates will have the opportunity to respond.
We were quick to debunk yourself, but in any case, according to two credible sources, World Bank and Global Firepower, which is an independent defense-related bureau, Nigeria military has between 215 and 223,000. Yeah.
Please, quiet in the hall.
Correct.
Please.
Mr. Peter Obi claimed that he was the first impeached governor to be reinstated by the judiciary. He actually said first at the time. When he was speaking, was yeah, that's fine. If you said second, you are correct. After Rashidi Ladoja, that's what our team actually was first. So if you said second, that's correct, sir. Yeah, thank you. Correct. I said it loud. But at the time he was speaking, he actually said first.
Quiet in the hall.
Yes.
Fact checker, please go ahead, or you are done.
Okay, Mr. Kokoso again claimed that the personnel strength of Nigeria's police force is 230,000 naira. 230,000, sorry. According to the information on the Interpol website and DataFight, a data company which cited Nigeria's police official sources, the police personnel population is 371,000, yielding 1 officer to 540 citizens ratio, which is also lower than the UN standard. The UN standard is 1 to 450. Yeah. So that claim was false. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we have ready. After the next segment, we'll continue. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Hassan Adebayo. Now we'll come to the candidates. You have 1 minute each to respond to the fact checking. Please, as we continue with the program, I said no interjections. Okay, Mr. Peter Obi, candidate of the Labour Party, you have 1 minute. Thank you, Pa.
Okay, to answer you, Mr. Taiwo, I said that police force is about 320,000. I went to the present IG of police and told him that the police force is 370, and he said to me 370,000, and he said to me, so I wanted to quote him. He said to me, no, it's about 320. I'm quoting him before you fact check. You haven't reached there. For the other things that I've said, what I said is that I was first to come through the court, second to come back for impeachment, then to redefine the election segments and was able to correct the tenure of governor, that is me. That's how I was first, second, first.
Okay, Dr. Rabi Kwankwaso.
Thank you very much, Ruben. You see, figures are dynamic. Every day, a policeman will die, will retire, will be sacked, will leave job himself. So we are always rounding figures. When you say at about 250, if it is 220, 230, it depends on his sources when they have taken that record. So also the police, I said 230, I didn't say 230, 231. We are just rounding the figure. And it all depends on what statistics was taken. Gentlemen, we respect your view, but we are experts in that area, so please take note.
Quiet in the auditorium, please. I think the cameraman should be focusing on the people who are disrupting this exercise. Well, Mr. Kolabola,
Thank you very much. If you go by the constitutional definition of the National Security Council, it's a 8-member council. If you go by that, they haven't sat by next since 1999. If you go by the expanded one where you call in the governors and you call in the IGs and maybe that's a different thing. But the actual council itself, by constitutional definition, is made up of 8, and that council hasn't sat. So please, you can check that again. Thank you.
Okay, very quickly. Earlier on, I said that our second panelist is in the Lagos studio. I think now we've been able to establish contact with him. We're done with the security segment, and I'm going to invite Mr. Bismarck Rowane, CEO Chairman of Financial Derivatives, to help us set the stage for the next round of conversation at this presidential town hall, which is the economy. Mr. Bismarck Rowane, thank you very much for joining us at this Arise News Presidential Town Hall. Please go ahead, Mr. Bismarck Rowane. You have about 5 minutes to quickly help us set the stage for the conversation that we're now going to on the economy of Nigeria?
Presidential candidates.
What would be the policy?
Presidential candidates. When you become president of Nigeria in June 2023, you'll be inheriting a budget of of 21 trillion naira, with a deficit of 11 trillion naira, of which subsidies will be 5 trillion naira, approximately. Can you say categorically and unequivocally whether you will eliminate subsidies, and what will you do with the extra funding that accrues to the federal government, and what will be done to soothe the nerves of Nigerians who are helpless and hopeless? That is one major question. The other thing I wanted to talk about was about the link between security and the economy, because we've had a very robust discussion on security. The biggest, or one of the major threats to security in Nigeria today is the question of oil theft in the Niger Delta. One of the candidates did speak about development in the Niger Delta, but the reality is that we are losing approximately 400 to 500,000 barrels of oil a day. Our OPEC quota is 1.8 million barrels approximately a day, and yet we are producing roughly about 1 million barrels. So the loss to Nigeria is something in anything between 12 to 15 billion dollars. This activity cannot take place without the connivance and compromise of the security that we're talking about. It is important at this point that if you do not address the question of oil theft, when oil revenues constitute almost 40 to 50% of fiscal revenues, and oil and gas constitutes about 90% of the foreign exchange earnings of this country. If you do not address this, then we will not be able to deal with the fundamental economic problem. Today, the growth rate of Nigeria is below average. We are lucky to be doing 3% growth or 3.1% growth in a good year. But the average growth in the last 5 years has been below 2%. Now, the currency itself is under pressure. Everybody knows that. The gross external reserves have increased, but also external debt. So the problems of Nigeria, are well documented. Now, this discussion today will be on how, and not the what you're going to do. Everybody's going to talk about what. Now, how are we going to deal with this situation? One thing has come out clearly, that when the price of oil was lower than this, much lower during the COVID days, the Nigerian external reserves, Nigerian currency, and Nigerian fiscal deficit was not as bad as it is today. Therefore, it is very clear that there are leakages in the system and suboptimality of utilization of resources. What can we say will be done to ensure that, one, we stop the bleeding, we stop the hemorrhage, and bring it back normal? And finally, I would like to say here that for any presidential candidates, if you were told today and you were approached that this is a time that currency in circulation is 3 trillion naira, while money supply is 49 trillion naira. If you were told that currency in circulation is only 6% of money supply, and that you are approached, bearing in mind that the central bank is autonomous and independent, would you go ahead and approve, one, that the currency should be designed and changed at this time, or two, would you look for other ways of reining in inflation and keeping the foreign exchange stable at this point in time? That is those are some of the issues. But mainly and purely what has come out clearly to most people is that there is a revenue problem, but there's more of a management problem. And the management problem has resulted from mainly nepotism. Nepotism because people want to put in their people from their own area, whether they're qualified or not. And even if they get into there, they are not fired, and there can be no discipline because the people are sacred cows because they come from certain areas. It will be important to address all of these issues because Nigeria has no time to waste. We are 115 or maybe less than 120 days to an election, and it is quite clear that the pressure on the economy is coming unbearable. So I think the discussion today is quite clear. It's really obvious that time is run out. The economy is
more soft, ordinary, an ongoing one, and then at the same time ensure that the resources are invested in critical development areas like supporting MSMEs, education, health, and pulling people out of poverty. That's what I'm going to do in subsidy. On issue of oil theft, I've said those who are stealing oil are people in government. Because you can't steal oil, it's not something you put in your bucket. There must be a ship that will come and load it. I'm not an expert in it. But even the managing director of Nigeria Ports Authority said when the ships come into Nigeria, they remove what we used to dictate them. So can't our Navy dictate them if they remove their dictation facility? So it is it's a crime we need to deal, and I assure you it will be dealt with decisively. On issue of exchange rate will be fought in two ways. One is fiscal responsibility. As long as we continue the way we are going with fiscal rascality, printing money and throwing it, by the time you remove subsidy, deal with the issue of oil theft, which will make you earn more foreign exchange, deal with the issue, other issues, like what I said, move from consumption to production, you're able to make more money. If you export more and you're able to have more foreign currency, you manage and stabilize your foreign currency.
Next, Mr. Kola Abiola.
Thank you. I think first we need to decide what kind of economy we want. Do we want a market-driven economy or want a public sector-driven economy? Because that determines the kind of policies we embark on to solve the economic problem. If it's market-driven, you want it to raise capital globally. And that is the beginning of your answer. Doesn't necessarily mean government cannot intervene from time to time. The biggest capital economy, market-driven economy, the US to date, you still have government interventions from time to time. Very recently in England, this Bank of England came in to buy bonds to help deal with their interest rate problems. So there's many of that going on. If we're going to be a market-driven economy, we must be able to use that to set up a strong capital market. And from the capital market, you will get your bonds that you require to fund Naira-based bonds to fund a lot of your infrastructural development. Now, to create that, you must decide whether you want to create jobs and how you want to fill those jobs to sustain the level of activity and sustain growth within the economy. PRP, our own Marshall Plan, is a massive infrastructure development that will create jobs. There will be massive infrastructure in every regional set. We have 6 regions, and all the 6 regions. But more importantly, we will manage that by making sure that we stop subsidizing consumption, but production that adds value to development. Also, we want to have an economy that decides for once to make sure that Nigerians are a stakeholder in its growth. So, for example, you will have people, instead of subsidizing consumption, the subsidies can go into mortgages, building homes, additionally with workers and their pension funds. Interest rates could be subsidized for them, and making sure that those things are planned and applied to things that can actually give you a stake in Nigeria, but more importantly, create jobs as we go. It's all about sustainable growth. Now, the forex is a big problem. You can't have the biggest earner of foreign exchange in Nigeria, which is our oil and our crude, go up and down from time to time. Like during the COVID, it was at its lowest, but your exchange rate remained fixed. There's something wrong with that mechanism. You cannot have an exchange rate that is fixed, that is twice, if not more, the black, gray, white market, or whatever you want to call it, is about 2.5 times your fixed exchange rate. There's something very wrong with that mechanism. Something has to be done to deal with that. Now, if you don't address those things, your inflationary factor, for example, is it the exchange rate? Is it because we're an import-based economy, and because of the fluctuation in the exchange rate, is that why you have the inflationary factor we have? You have to decide that. Is it because we have a lack of infrastructure, so the cost of food is expensive because we don't have the roads? 60% of the economy of the country is flooded today. There's no security also. That has an effect on your cost of food. And those are putting pressures on inflation. And at the same time, if you don't figure those, you'll be giving paradox for what is not a headache. You need to figure out those things and then address them. And that's where we will start from to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Please pay attention.
Thank you very much.
Time allotted is 3 minutes.
Now, all theft. We are going to stop anything that has to do with the stealing, from the villa to civil servants to contractors to all our assets, including the oil itself. We have so much that is happening in this country. The records that is available to us, we have seen even solid minerals being shifted or transported out of the country on a daily basis. So it is very critical that we work on how to stop stealing of oil and other assets owned by the nation. Now, the issue of subsidy, yes, we are all aware that there is a lot of corruption in that field. And our first area of attack in that area on the issue of the subsidy is the issue of corruption. Of course, subsidy overall doesn't do any good to anybody. But we are at the same time concerned with the welfare of Nigerians. We are going to create necessary palliatives to ensure that even if we take it away, and it is very necessary in the long term that it has to be removed, so palliatives that our administration is putting on the ground is there. Now, the issue of exchange rate. You see, in the economy, there are so many things that are intertwined. It's not one thing, it's not two things. The issue of exchange has to do with so many things. Has to do with the corruption that is going on in the nation, has to do with even the oil theft. As we have heard, we have 2.2 million that we are supposed to give out, we send out, going by the OPEC arrangement. Now, the record we have is much less than that. So we have to do whatever it takes to stop stealing. And I know ordinarily somebody should ask, where do we get money to fund the issue of 1 million military, 1 million police, free education, and so on and so forth, that we are going to do when we have the opportunity, especially in the area of funds that people are buying the issue of NECO, WAEC, and other examinations in our blueprint. We have made it clear that no Nigerian child or student will pay such money because we know the consequences of what has been happening in the country. We also say that even JAMB should stay for 4 years, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's now the turn of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party with Dr. Franyo Okorowa, Governor of Delta State, standing in for him. You have 3 minutes.
On the issue of subsidy, I think that as my colleagues have said here, there's no doubt that there's a scam there, because I do know at the point in time we're doing over 90 million liters per day, which was not possible. And when we interrogated that, they dropped it to just about 60 million liters per day, which is also not possible. So obviously there's a crime in that particular place. But what I think we need to do is to quickly find ways to enable refining of products in Nigeria. Dangote refinery is already on track on that. So we must do everything possible to enable him take off as early as possible next year. I'm informed that he's going to take off early next year. We're there at the fertilizer plant when it was brought to life. And I think that anything that is an impediment, government ought to, realizing that they are losing a lot through subsidy, government ought to find all possible ways of encouraging him and getting that refinery to start. It's very important to do that. And then we must encourage Bodla refinery, because with the kind of capacity that he has, if we're able to drive up to 650,000 barrels per day, that will likely reduce the effect of subsidy. It should no longer be there. But whether it's necessary, at the moment, it ought to be necessary, but it's something that has to be taken up, or we are not rich enough to subsidize it. You can't borrow money to do subsidy, because at the moment we are borrowing for everything, every capital expenditure, even for the subsidy we are borrowing. So that's not the pathway to go. Then concerning the oil theft, is of 2 types. You have the organized crime that is top-based, where people are able to take crude oil through vessels and out of the country. Then you have the illegal refining that is going on. All these things come from, they take crude oil from the pipelines. So we need to have a pipeline surveillance system that is credible and that could make that could work. In the first instance, the application of technology is something that ought to be looked into. But before then, the people who were involved in the pipeline surveillance in the past, it was also a criminal approach to the whole thing. They were actually doing nothing and just casting away money. People raised their voices when the new contract was issued, but a lot of things are being unearthed at the moment already. So I think that we can look into all those issues, and if we are focused and want to do the right thing, we will definitely be able to stop that within time. And then coming to the exchange rate issue, if we produce and we are no longer subsidizing oil and we get the Dangote refinery to start working, if we privatize the refineries that we have, which are not working, we cannot continue to do turnaround maintenance. I'm sure that we'll begin to save a lot of money. We produce for export, we begin to earn, and we spend less on import. That's import substitution. That is very important. It's very important. When you go in that direction, we'll be able to have enough resource in terms of dollars, and we will not be in the situation that we find ourselves. It is very criminal to have 400 and something naira to $1 in the official rate, and the BDC rate is twice that amount. It is criminal for any economy. The economy cannot grow, and we cannot go in that path.
Okay, I recall that quiet in the hall. I recall that Mr. Bismarck Rewani also raised a question about budget deficit. I know that you've all talked about the subsidy, how it will be removed, but how do you deal with the deficit in that budget that you are going to inherit? Maybe we'll just take a minute each, and each candidate will take a look at that. Let me start with you, Mr. Kola Abiola, candidate of the People's Redemption Party.
Yeah, thank you. The budget deficit is quite frankly, if applied right and to create value, there's nothing really wrong in debt. It's just how you use your debt that is questionable, and that's where we have problems in Nigeria. Is it used for consumption? Is it used for production? Is it used for infrastructure? And if that infrastructure, is it cost right? Is it cost right? Is it spec right? And are they built on time? If you don't put in all those things in place, then no matter how good that infrastructure development is, it'll never pay back and never serve its purpose. And that's where the corruption factor comes in. Something has to be done about that. There has to be accountable. We have to not just look at debt from our foreign debt and the foreign exchange part of it, but also our domestic debt. We have a huge domestic debt in Nigeria. Collectively, we're looking at that figure he said, 1.1 trillion. We need to look at that debt. How are we going to fund it? We have to make sure we have a strong capital market to do that and make it tradable, and then we will have some solutions. But yes, it has to be looked at and accountable, and people must be held responsible for the corruption involved. Thank you.
Thank you. The candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party.
Thank you very much. You see, we have an experience in Kano. In 1999, I inherited a lot of debt in Kano. I lost election in 2003. When I was going, I left zero debt. So also in 2011, I went there, I inherited hundreds of billion US dollars as debt. By the time I was living in 2015, Kano had zero debt. We never borrowed for the 8 years I was governor. And we left so much money in one account, the account of electricity generation, which we are doing from Tiga Dam and Chala Gorge Dam. We left over 43 million US dollars for government to conclude that. So we inherited a budget which recurrent was 70%, capital 30. By the time I was born in 2015, we reversed that. The capital expenditure was 70% and the recurrent 30%. All I believe that in this country we have enough money, enough resources. All what we need is leadership that will keep its eyes to ensure that every quarter goes to the right place, or manage the value for every contract and everything that we buy in this country. In that case, we will not even be talking about budget deficit. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peter Obi, candidate of the Labour Party.
Following what Bismarck said, he said there's a budget of 21 trillion with a 5 trillion subsidy. So by then you remove the 5 trillion, you're down to 16. And I assure you that if you aggressively, as I intend to do, cost waste and cost of governance, because there's a lot of waste in governance that you can cut. By the time you deal with it, which will now bring that to about 14 trillion, then you do the right things. By the time you're able to tackle all loopholes of revenue leakages, including the oil theft, you're back to where you have a balanced budget. However, if there's need to borrow, I'm not against borrowing, I've always advocated it. You borrow for production. It's a lot. If every country of the world is owing, but you borrow, but even those who are using, for example, like Singapore, everybody comes, it's 120% of their GDP is in debt. So you borrow for production. If we borrow for production, then we would have been better off today, even servicing our debt. So I will do whatever it takes to ensure that we bring a balanced budget and strictly borrow for production, which will grow the economy and be able to pull people out of poverty.
Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, your turn.
Thank you so much. I agree with the Labour Party candidate that if you borrow for the right reasons, particularly for critical infrastructure, is important. For production, is very important. I agree with him on that. But the situation is a little worse than that. Of course, the subsidy money of 5 trillion is something we cannot continue with. We just have to find something to do about it, but considering the fact that our people are also already in pain, and I've advocated the need to get the Dangote refinery to run, and I know that it's just a little push that will get us into that particular bracket. But beyond that, in that budget that we see, we are only generating about just about 8.2 to 8.3 trillion. That's our revenue that's anticipated. And about 6.5 trillion is going to be for debt service. We must take note of that. So if debt service is going to take us that much, then there's a critical problem already with us. The economy is in shambles. There's no doubt about that. And we have to find ways to address it. Of course, our lending partners, we have to sit back on the table and have a heart-to-heart talk with them, get them to trust us, and we'll begin to find ways to restructure our debts. There's no doubt. Otherwise, without that, it will be difficult for us to move on. So it's important that we look at all this. We must find ways of generating more revenue internally, and all those things that are no longer functional. Government enterprises that are not functional, that ought to be making profit, we need to send it to the private sector. Then we must engage the private sector. We must engage them in infrastructure development and give them the needed tax incentives and the needed concessions or tax reliefs that we have to give. And it's very important. There's no way that government can provide the critical infrastructure without the private sector coming in to partner with government and even to lead in the development of our critical infrastructure.
Okay, at this point, I would also now like to invite our second panelist, who is in Abuja here. We have heard from Mr. Bismarck Rewane in our Lagos studio. So Dr. Jubrin Ibrahim of the Center for Democracy and Development. Your question for the candidates.
Thank you. I've listened with keen interest. All the four of you agree that criminality and corruption is the bane of the problem affecting the Nigerian economy. And you've all affirmed your principled position to go the other direction and to combat it. As an old teacher, I always draw people's attention to what they can read. My recommendation today is Politics as a Vocation by the German sociologist Max Weber, written 100 years ago. He said there is no magic in democratic politics. In every political system where you must expend a huge budget to get power, you are obliged, when you get that power, to transform the economy to serve those who have invested money to get power rather than to serve the people. This means, given the widespread estimates that you are all, the four of you, spending billions in this campaign, your primary objective when you get power is to recover your investment and to make a profit. How can you convince me otherwise?
Well, who will go first now? Who will go first? Okay, Mr. Kola is volunteering to go first.
Thank you. We're the People's Party, so we don't invest billions in politics. But more importantly, there's a deficit, there's inflation, there's an FX issue. We're advocating a market-driven economy. What we have to do is to be able to coordinate all this to provide jobs, but more importantly, begin to use that as a means to have a progressive tax rate and widen the base and the net to help generate the revenue. I'm not talking about percentages now, I'm talking about the base and the progressive tax rate. But more importantly, you must feel you have a stake in country. you must want to invest in country. You must believe in the leadership you have to invest in country. We've had the Euro bonds, we've had all those bonds. We've never seen one Nigerian invest or corporate entity invest. It's always been foreign investments. Now, we want to give you pride to invest. And once we give you that opportunity, I think we will begin to have a stake and solve the problem. We're here to serve Nigerians. We're here to make sure we create the jobs and give a level playing field to help create those jobs and help the generation that's coming to create jobs for themselves. We are looking at our sovereign national fund, and we're thinking of having a special fund, an IT fund. And I must commend the present administration for its new thing about starting business. I forget what they call it now right away. Sorry? The startup thing. I think that's commendable, but we will take that one step forward. We will take it and have a fund that is purely IT for the diaspora. If you're in the diaspora, whether you're black anywhere in the world, Brazil, Latin America, name it, if you have a good idea, come here, set it up. If it's good, we would be your venture capital fund for that, to set up industries. We would also go ahead and making sure that we create the enabling environment for that. We want to be able to also look at our agriculture and tell ourselves that we're going to have an infrastructure that aids not just the cultivation of raw material, but also the process and distribution of our materials. We have to add value to that. We have to make sure that we earn keep for every barrel of oil pumped. Corruption has to stop across the board, and we have to be held accountable. We have to also go ahead and realize that if the security situation is not settled, nothing will work in Nigeria. Nothing will give you the confidence to want to invest in Nigeria. Nothing will want to give you the will to grow Nigeria and take a stake in it. And we're going to create that environment. We're not here to share billions. We are here to correct the faults from the old parties, from the old generation, to at least try to do it differently for a change. That's what PRM is all about. It's been disturbing me all day.
No, we need to keep it
because
on.
he keeps disrupting, and the guy's not getting it right. He's not getting it right. So, 1 minute, 3 minutes, I think he's confused. So, let us just understand that. So please, this is where we are, and we're here to stand for the future of Nigeria, and that's what it's all about. We need to do these things. And I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Dr. Abu Kampa, the presidential candidate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I believe that everybody in this country knows that our party, the NPP, is not based on the leadership of the money-bags. Everybody knows that we have an ideology, we have our beliefs on the party itself and even the governance. We have done it before, and by the grace of God, if we have opportunity, we will do it even better. Now, we joined this party in less than 7-8 months. We have our party structure in the ground. We have our candidates almost 100%. We have our leadership intact. We are campaigning. But I want to assure you and assure the nation that right from the front, after the some other parties, the previous spending millions of naira, even dollars, to purchase candidates and so on. I believe ours is completely different. Ours is based on the fact that we believe in credibility, we believe in capacity, we believe in one united Nigeria. equal opportunity, not minding of ethnicity or religion or where we come from. So this particular question, I believe that even the new question asking the question knows that it doesn't apply to us. So I will give a telephone for those who should answer the question properly. Thank you very much.
Mr. Peter will be please quiet in the hall. Mr. Peter will be.
Well, let me join the one person saying that this doesn't belong to us. But however, if I take your question, everybody knows that Labour Party is not party of money. The obedience or obedience are not controlled by money. I've never given anybody, they know that. I don't give because we want to work. Yes, we're trying to raise money within our little means to continue what we're doing because we want to work on people. But I believe that your question is the issue of fighting corruption. And I've maintained consistently, if you want to deal with corruption index measurement, which is a critical thing in Nigeria, is failing every day, you have to look at the candidates, the character, the integrity, the competence, everything about the candidate, and ask yourself questions. All of us are coming from somewhere. Where we passed, can we go there and verify? Somebody has been governor of a state. Let's start by appointment. How many of his relations was given appointment? Go to Anambra State. Nobody from my town was the commissioner. Nobody from my town was chief of staff or anybody. Go and check it. It's in Anambra State. Go and check. There's no piece of land allocated directly or indirectly to me or any of my siblings. Go and check whether any of their money is missing. I've challenged those agencies. Go and check Anambra State money. If it's missing, hold me responsible. So that's where you start. So we're not going to go into, if a man says, I'm going to do this, like they said, if you can manage a penny, we'll give you an hour to manage. So let's check the past. People who are saying that this and that, how was their part? I've passed through parts where I shared corporations and everything. Go to them and see if any of them, there's a place where they will say, Peter, we did this for that. Even in banking, I never lent money to any of the company that was involved. You must borrow money from somewhere else. And above all, I borrowed money locally and internationally. I can say today that by the time I left England, I have the highest credit rating any English person can have. Based on that business today, I'm still being invited. So personally, I do not get involved in that. And I have a vice who I believe is that tries on the same thing. Both of us will fight corruption because it's critical. And we'll find a head up where we'll bring it to a minimal, if not entirely eliminate it. Because it starts from you. If you are not stealing, your family is not stealing, those around you, you can control them, you put it in check. So I'm saying to you, we will go in there to manage the resources of the state. We've done it somewhere, and we want to do it at the center. Thank you.
Quiet in the hall. Okay, now the turn of Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, standing in for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party.
Just to remind us that the PDP, as a government, created the anti-corruption institutions that we have today. It's important that we take note of that. Secondly, we shouldn't lie to Nigerians. As politicians, if you say you're not spending any money, you'll be lying. Why would they lie publicly to Nigeria? The fact is that how much are you spending? Yes. But for those parties that already have structures everywhere, and over time have also created a lot of people and built a lot of people, there's a lot of contribution coming from different places. But if the Labour Party and NMPP, they are telling me today that they don't spend money, I don't know whether they are walking to their campaign grounds. Because I've seen some of them take private jets. At some instances, money is being spent by the day. Yes, money will be spent. But how is the money coming? Coming from a lot of people because their structures are already created. But the real thing is the Nigerian politics expensive? It is. Whether they accept it or not, they know that inside they are spending money. But the thing that we ought to work for and to ensure is that if you have made promises, as he has drawn our attention to, if you have made promises, keep to your promises, touch the life of the people, live for humanity. And the best way to check that is to ensure that Nigerians' electoral system is credible. So we must ensure a credible electoral process. We must also ensure that the judiciary can be trusted. Once you get these two right, if you come to Nigerians and tell them I'll do this and do that, and you fail them, at the next election, once the electoral system is credible, they will vote you out. That is the best check. Even as we continue to fight corruption and accountability, or our promises, whether they are kept or not, ensure, as Nigerians, we must ensure that the electoral system remains credible and the courts can be trusted to do the right things. Once we get these two right, every other thing will follow through because Nigerians will exercise their votes.
Quiet in the auditorium. Yeah, thank you very much. Quickly now, we'll begin to round up, but we'll take 3 questions, 3 interventions from the audience. And we're going to take the 3 questions together. And then the candidates will respond very briefly in about a minute each, and would begin to round up this program. Who will go first?
I'm here.
Yes. Your name?
My name is Sam Amadi.
Please come forward.
What my question
Please,
is
very brief.
very good.
Go straight to the point.
My question is to all the aspirants. We have all talked about the economic crisis, and 21 has given us the data package. In the 1980s, we had similar crisis arising from a global crisis and a local crisis. My question is, what is your own understanding about the relationship between the structural crisis of the Nigerian economy and the present crisis? So to say, basically saying, how do you intend, do you connect this crisis to the structural problem of the economy beyond the pandemic and the global oil crisis and the value chain crisis from Ukraine-Russia war? And if so, how do you want to address this crisis? We've done this part before, we've taken technical solutions for addressing the structural crisis of the economy. How do you intend to do that?
Okay, next person from the audience.
Austin Egbe, the question is, poverty and insecurity works hand in hand. Poverty is a pestilence that promotes the banditry, and poverty affects women the more. Evidence suggests that when you have more women in politics, particularly in governance, there seems to be some level of correlation that brings down poverty. Straight to the question, therefore, is how would you, or what would be the number of women representation in your government to solve economic challenges and, very importantly, security challenges? This question is from the Women Radio, from Tosh and Toya. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take another question from the audience.
Colonel Jeff Onyejebu, very quickly. Wow. Very quickly. Wow. I just want to make you all realize that you are before your employers, Nigerians. And if you are going for employment, you must have some skill sets that will make the employers hire you. My question, if you look at the way England, the royals, are structured, all their offspring that are made must be made to have military experience, both background and training, and they
them, you can fact check, had military experience and defense experience. Now, the question is, if you don't have military and defense experience, what are you going to do as the president-elect, knowing that that office wears two cap badges, that of Mr. President, one, and then Commander-in-Chief, second. Yes, no issues with him.
Please keep the question short.
But
please keep to the
that of
rules.
Commander-in-Chief, what are you going to do with very little or no experience in military or defense experience? Thank you.
Okay, we'll take 2 more interventions. Please, no lecture, no long-winded, triple barrel, double barrel questions. Who is next? Next person, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Kachi Onoluju. I want to ask why, in the issues of security and the issues of oil theft, I don't see the parties speak up against the ruling party, except Governor Peter Obi. And I started to ask myself, does it mean that the oil theft and the security challenges for which the foreign international partners like the British, the Americans, the Australians, the Bulgarians, the Indians have all raised their voice? And I noticed a lot of the parties kept quiet and nothing was said, where we saw a clear and existential danger to our democracy, in which people were trying to come sack Abuja, and when we know after that the democracy could be undermined. I ask this question, why is it that? Added to that is the oil theft, in which our oil has now been captured by those engaged in state capture. How come the parties have all kept quiet to this?
Okay, the next person.
Good evening, Your Excellencies. Permit me to stand on all existing protocol. My name is Ilemona Onoja, and I would like to ask a question relating to the link between Nigeria's mineral resources and mineral rights and insecurity. If you check in northern Nigeria, Zamfara, a lot of the restiveness and banditry there is circulated around gold. If you check in Plateau, around minerals, and then in the Niger Delta, around oil. Now, only one political party, the People's Democratic Party, has any sort of pledge for resource control, the devolution of resource control to the states and to the subnational levels of government. I'd like to ask Governor Okowa if you can please expand on that, and then I'd like to ask the candidates of all the other political parties what their plans for devolution of mineral rights to the states and subnational levels of government are.
So we are being pleaded with to take one woman, just the last lady, just.
Good evening, His Excellencies and everybody. My name is Engineer Queen Duribe. I would like to know from the 4 contestants, because I've not heard anybody talk about how they want to tackle IPOP, Boko Haram, and the insecurities that are facing the country currently. Secondly, Nigerians at home want to know how you want to tackle the flood that is causing rice to be very expensive, because me, I love to eat rice. How do you want to make rice affordable for the poor masses to be able to support? And people that have farms, that have poultry, that have their farms grow as well, how do you want to tackle that and make that bearable for the poor masses in Nigeria? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those contributions from the audience. but we've discussed a lot under this segment of the program. But I haven't heard anybody talking about power, electricity. And if we're going to have double-digit economic growth, power is very important. What are you going to do about electricity? I would like each candidate on the floor respond to all the issues that have been raised, all taken together. And thank you, Pa. This time around, as we begin to round up, each candidate will have 5 minutes. Who will go first? Who is going to volunteer to go first? Okay, you want to go first? Okay, we go left to right. That means we start with Governor Ifeanyi.
About the structural crisis in the country, there are so many issues wrong with the economy today and on. First, unfortunately for us as a country, we are continuing to depend on oil. Even the oil with the gas, we are not even developing the gas component enough. We're still dealing with associated gas. All our natural gas in several trillions of cubic feet, we've not touched anything about it. And that is an asset that can truly lift us up from where we are. So we need to rethink our process. So once you have shocks in the oil industry, there's a big problem. The COVID came, we're in trouble. The COVID is out because the oil prices have gone up. When we ought to reap gains, because we are not refining, we are now in trouble also. So the whole thing is totally wrong. Unfortunately, we're not developing the manufacturing sector. We are not doing well in the agricultural sector. Everything is going definitely wrong. We need to rethink all this, and that is already well documented in our process, in our manifesto to Nigerians. We need to recreate the agricultural sector in a way that it works. We need to be sure that we're able to modernize agriculture. Even when we have to get the private sector to come in to do commercial farming, we must also ensure that we're able to sit down with them to ensure that we have the agro schemes are tied to their agro production and agro processing. Those things are important to uplift every Nigerian from where they ought to be. Then coming to women representation, we have spoken about that as a part. My Jean-Claude has said that he's going to ensure that women have a minimum of 35%, and if possible, even exceed that. So women must be brought into governance because they matter a lot. It's not just the fact. Most women are also getting very well educated. It's not like before, so they can truly function in government. The issue about military and defense experience, I think we've talked about all that in security. But for my presidential candidate, having been a former vice president for 8 years, that's a lot of experience. It's important that we take note of that. Oil theft and parties are quiet about it. I don't know about parties being quiet about oil theft. A lot of people have spoken about it severally. We've been talking about this for so long. And the fact that we don't even understand what is going on in terms of how oil is moved out and the surveillance system. I've been a very strong voice on that the surveillance system and the contracting they've been doing in the past have been very shady. Now that they've got the right set of people, things are working, things are being discovered. And all those things that are being hidden is now coming out. And then the military sector and the rest, they are now aware, they are already rebuilding their system and trying to attend to the issues. So we hope that we'll be able in some time to meet with OPEC quota. I think it's just a little over 1.6 million barrels per day. It's not yet 1.8, but we are very far from there. So definitely, I believe that the right systems are in place. They will obviously need technology to further the improvement that we're seeing at the moment. On the issue of mineral resource and the people's right, we have always talked about this. Even when we are not going back to full resource control of the economy, it's important for the sake of competition that the states, the sub-national governments, and the local governments should have more funds. They should have more powers so that they're able to be competitive and to develop because they are closest to their people. And you have to provide resources for them. We can't generate all the resources and the federal government takes something percent. It's not right. And that's why things are not functioning. It's as if everybody is coming to Abuja to take, to share from the cake. And little peanuts are given to the states and the local government. It ought not to be so. The people must recognize. Even the Petroleum Industry Act recognizes the communities where oil is produced, where there's a lot of suffering, a lot of deportation, nation. They talked about the issue of IPOD. It is something that we have to look into. What we're seeing there is that people, it's an agitation. So we have to be able to separate genuine agitation from criminal elements. Genuine agitation, I believe that the right process to do is to sit down with them and have a true dialogue on the pathway out. And I believe that we can be convinced that we can get back to the same path. It's a question of trust. It's a question of inclusion in governance. It's a question of inclusion in development. And when people are reassured that they are part of the nation and that they will be recognized, I'm sure that something right to be done. Therefore, the criminal elements, it will be dealt with through the law. But for those who have genuine agitation, you cannot suppress them. What we ought to do is to sit down on the table with them and make them realize that there is a government that is in place and that government recognizes those things that they actually seek for. If Nigeria is working for everybody, I'm not sure anybody will want to get out of Nigeria, but we're stronger together. There's no doubt about that, we're stronger together. It's because within the last few years, some sections of the country are feeling that they've been excluded from government. And these things have to be corrected. We need to run an all-inclusive government where everybody is recognized and where people are feeling anger. We need to sit on the table and get them to really have a dialogue with us, and we reconvince them that there is hope for all. I think on the issue of power is part of infrastructure. Definitely where we are today is not good enough. The laws have tended to hold us back. There is a legislation within the National Assembly, and I hope we're able to get everything through. But the fact is, we need to ensure that the private sector leads everything, both from generation to distribution, to transmission, to distribution is very important. And we must liberalize that sector to the extent that captive power must play a very important role. We cannot all be on the national grid. It's not possible. I have a secretariat, a huge secretariat functional that was built, and all government facilities in my state, including the hospitals and the rest, within the captive territory. We are running it with captive power. And I'm sure that if more and more people are encouraged to develop captive power, either for industrial layout or in their various small communities and towns and spaces, and there's no law restricting them, a lot of the private sector want to put their money in that step. And we'll find that within a short time, we'll be generating a lot of power. We have promised this nation that we are looking forward to 25,000 megawatt generation by the year 2030. But in doing this, where we are at the moment is about 7,000 megawatts, and it fluctuates continuously, and it's not the right thing to do. I think the private sector has to lead it, but we have to provide the enabling environment for us to get there. But we must also do something about our transmission lines, because that one is breaking continuously. Nobody is looking into it. Currently, that is just purely under the government. We need to rework it and ensure that the private sector comes in. Thank you.
Quiet. Next, Mr. Peter will be candidate of the Labour Party.
Thank you. If you look at the first issue, which you mentioned, issue of solving the structural problem, it has to deal with the issue of whatever everybody says, issue of diversification of the economy. Let me put it on record. The Nigerian economy is well diversified. Oil as the measure contributes less than 10% of our GDP. But the problem is that it contributes about 50% of government revenue and about 80% of our foreign exchange earning. Our biggest contributor to our GDP today is agriculture. If you look at our about 180 trillion economy, agriculture contributes about 4 to 1 trillion, which is about 20-something% of that economy. So it is not, it's very diversified. Our trading is contributing over 15%, ICT is contributing over that. So what you need to do, the reason why we are not getting enough or it's not working is that as diversified as they are not productive. You need to increase the level of production. That is the problem. That's what I was talking about agriculture. You can have almost 60% of the arable land uncultivated, and you still, if you If you're able to invest in the land, invest in this, and be able to contribute to export goods. Just imagine if you can feed yourself. We are 220 million. Imagine if you take 1,000, you can feed yourself. You can move your, at an average of 1,000 a day. By 1 year, you will triple, you would at least get your contribution of agriculture to about 80 trillion. And that will change the level. So it's a question of how do you ramp up your production. That's why Labour is saying we want to move the country from consumption to production. It is critical when you do it. In terms of how many women serving in government, I keep saying you have to go to and check example. We have assured that women and youth will be the engine of our government. And then I have shown an example of how many women who have worked with me as governor. You go and check from deputy governor, chief of staff, commissioner for finance, commissioner for education, commissioner for local government. I can go on and on, all women. So that is given. How many women that will serve in government? Issue of being commander-in-chief without having a military experience. Well, if you have checked up the known presidents that have known all over the world, including the present Prime Minister of Britain, he doesn't have military experience. He just has to deal with the right people who have that experience, hire them, and if you're commander-in-chief, you have the political will to do the right thing. That's it. God, I will hire you. I will make sure you do the right thing. In terms of oil theft, I've said it openly, and what I'll do everywhere. Devolution of powers to ensure resource control. I have said consistently I'll move Nigeria from sharing formula to production formula. And I'll show it because there's so many countries, there's so many states here that cannot continue going the way they're going. Today we have a problem in Borno State. Borno State is 70.9 thousand square kilometers of land. That is more than Belgium, Israel put together. Yes, go and check their production in agriculture. Go and check what is happening in Borno State. There are so many things we can do with Nigeria, the vast land in the north. So, the evolution of power and resource control, we will deal with, and we'll deal with it aggressively and ensure. I'm not happy with what is happening in Nigeria. It's unacceptable. Look at what they're going through. We've exploited their own over the years. We need to fix it. The remaining resources that are used to fix Niger Delta, why produce resources all over Nigeria? And every part of Nigeria can be a huge resource production center. And that's what Labour intends to do. How do we tackle the issue of IPOB, Boko Haram, or all agitations? I've said repeatedly, I will dialogue with every agitator. There's nothing wrong in agitation. I will consult. Governance in democracy is about consensus. I will consult, I will dialogue, I will meet everybody. Dialogue is normal. Agitation is normal. So we will deal with everybody. We will make sure we sit down and talk and resolve issues amicably. Issue of power. Issue of power is one that we intend to tackle aggressively. First is that today, Nigeria have a stored capacity today of 12,000 plus. And that, even if you produce, it cannot be wheeled because your transmission line can only take about 6,000. And that is the problem. And your distribution infrastructure is also weak. First is to upgrade and ensure that I deal aggressively with the transmission and distribution infrastructure to be able to take what we can produce immediately, which is about 12,000. On that, top of that, is to deal with issue of ensuring that those who are in generation today are supported by making sure they get dedicated gas supply with policies that are consistent, and then start dealing with new ones that will come in, including bringing in embedded captive power, anything you can do to ensure renewable energy to ensure that you ramp up that as quickly as possible. It can be done. We have over 100 million Nigerians without electricity. According to World Bank, it's 90 million, but for me, it's over 100 million. That is unacceptable. So you have to declare war on power. If South Africa with over 50,000 megawatts can declare emergency, we will declare war here in power. In terms of flood control is a I don't know how to describe it. The reason why we have the flood situation we have today, and I thank so many governors who are intervening, including Governor Kowa and what they are doing to manage the situation. But it's something Nigeria can manage and reduce the devastating effects by just dredging and the silt in all these rivers, River Niger and River Benue, by working on them, by channeling things properly, by doing dams and everything. If Nile in Egypt can maintain today the Nile as functional, where they say no Nile, no Egypt, and Nile is 6,650 kilometers long. Nigeria as a country can deal with Niger, River Niger, that is only 4,184 kilometers long. With River Benue that is 1,004. If you bring two of them together, they are still about 1,000 short of Nile, and yet Egypt can deal with it. We can deal with this too. And contracts over the years have been awarded, but people have mismanaged it, and we will deal with it. I assure you that this situation cannot arise. Even now that is the situation, I will stop everything and go and stay there. When I look at what Baisa is going through today, I will be living in Baisa as commander-in-chief with them, showing empathy, showing everything with them to show that it is a country. On issue of, I think, with all this, for me, it is a question of how do we continue to ensure that our economy is productive. And I've shown that this economy can be productive. I'm a wealth creator. And what this country needs is people who can create wealth. People who have created wealth can manage it more efficiently. They are allowing the country to be managed by those who have never created anything. Thank you.
Quiet in the hall, quiet please. Please. Candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Dr. Musolabu Kwankwaso.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency. I've been given an example of Borno State many times. I thought you would give an example of Nasarawa, where I launched campaign. Thank you. Yes. Now, the issue of economy, the structure of the economy in the country. I will agree with the candidate of the PDP, at least in this area I can agree with you that there's need for diversification. The only thing of that PDP and the APC had the opportunity to do the diversification. Unfortunately, we find ourselves now in this mess. But I believe that this is the way to go. We have seen many blueprints. Unfortunately, they are not being implemented. What I want to assure you here, through Nigerians, is that we have got a very comprehensive blueprint. Not only we raise the issues, but of course we suggested solutions, and exactly that is what we are going to do. Everybody knows that in our group, in our party, if you say Concasia or NPP, you can also say Trust or Omana. So we are sure of that. You see, the poverty that exists across the country, especially on the issue of women, is that there are many things that would have been done in this country, unfortunately, are not able to do. The issue of education. especially in this part of the country. We have to encourage everybody. And that's why during my tenure in Kano, for the years I was in government, 8 years, there was no child that was not given adequate opportunity right from primary, secondary to tertiary education. In fact, during my last few years, we are even looking for Kano, we don't say indigenous, we say residents, to join our two universities that were established, Kano University of Science and Technology and Northwest University. Unfortunately, we have sent over 3,000 of them into 14 countries across the world. We selected some private universities in Nigeria, like Al-Kalami, Kasina, we sent 412, Ignido University 300, Girls University 300 students, Crescent University 200, even Abti in Adamawa, despite the very high cost, we still send 25 to Abti. So during our time, including the girls, in fact we had special program for girls. We purchased hundreds of high capacity buses. All our girl child were transported from their homes to schools free of charge. We opened all the opportunities right from primary school, secondary school, tertiary institutions, and we give them equal opportunities. And I believe it's a time to thank the people of Kano, especially the husband, the parents, and so on, who allow their children to go all over the world. And I believe that if we do that, we can easily eradicate the poverty we are talking about. I'm sure all the thousands of people that were being sponsored locally and internationally, now they are not in poverty. We call them stars, we call them scholars. So I think education is the way. And the issue of representation in our government, I think history, our antecedents are there. We encourage as many women as possible to participate in government. But that is not enough. Even the cabinet itself, at national level, maybe 40, maybe 40, whatever number it is, depending upon the president, is small number if you compare to the women in this country. We have a comprehensive plan of ensuring that there will be an empowerment. We have comprehensive support, arrangement in our blueprint on free antenatal care services and many other things that have to do specifically with women and children. Now, the issue of defense experience in defense and military, I believe it is very critical, but I don't want to go too deep into that because of many obvious reasons. But the point remains that experience in any area is very important. And that's why when I started, I told you I was 17 years in the civil service of Kano. So civil service will be very comfortable, I'm sure I was Rabi Konkoso. That was why I told you that I was Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps and I was Senator of the Federal Republic. In fact, I was Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps. Put together, National Assembly will be happy with Rabi Konkoso. That was why I told you that I was Governor 8 years. I thought it was due to not laughing. Please, just look very serious. That was why when I was Governor of Kano, as Chief Security Officer, we took all the necessary steps to ensure security for Kano. And Kano is well secured, and Kano is peaceful, and Kano is making progress in terms of even economic activities, even under this very harsh environment of business in this country. I believe the people there are doing well. And that's why many people will think that Konkoso has Kano intact. In fact, many people tried to go there, but they didn't enjoy the visit. I'm sure they must be happy that they are back to Abuja. Now, criticizing government. You see, we are aspiring to be a government. We only do constructive criticism. Even here we criticize the government. Even by living APC, we criticize them. Even living PDP, all of them in power. It's big criticism. And our work today as opposition party is definitely to tell them why we decided to leave them. And I believe we are very happy to leave them, even though many of them are our friends now. And when we told not somehow, but ideologically we are completely different. Even when I was a governor, many people in PDP didn't agree with me in Kano. We had to do so many things that they don't agree with us because the ideology is different. When we are saying, we say we are bringing water supply to the state, that is not what they want. What they want is to get money and do boreholes in their houses. If we want to send children to abroad, no, they don't want poor people's children, the Kalakawas, to go anywhere. They want to ensure that they take the money and send their own children to abroad. And so on and so forth and so forth. Everything we are doing, we are having serious issues to the extent that in 2003, I was a sitting governor, I lost the election. Some of those people who, by coincidence, who formed PDP together with them, were so happy because they didn't agree with us. Anytime we want to Talakawa or the poor or the women or the children or the weak, they are very angry with us. So the ideology is completely different. So I'm so happy with this NNPP, which is giving Nigerians fair share to those are so happy. IPOP, Boko Haram, everybody, it is there in our manifesto. Even though my brother sitting by my right here said what is in our manifesto, even though I didn't see it in his manifesto. So I'm happy. You can always take that's why they put us close. You can always pick or lift whatever we have in our manifesto, no problem. But what we said is what he told us now. And I hope you will not change our manifesto because so we will sit down with everybody. We are Democrats, we are happy to discuss with everybody across the country. Anybody who is angry, we can sit down with him. We are politicians, we are Democrats. And I even told you, I am also angry. That is why I'm in NNPP. I don't agree with what PDP and APC were doing and still doing. So there will be two parties. Nigerians are free to choose the two. To us, they are the same. Or go for new thing, New Nigeria People's Party. And I told you, and we are happy with the good work we are doing in Southeast. Keep on moving. So, power and electricity. Now you see, this issue of power is key, is very fundamental. And ordinarily we should ask ourselves, why is it that we could not produce enough electricity for Nigeria? The answer, as usual, is leadership. In our manifesto and of course our blueprint, we made it clear how we are going to achieve it, including identifying areas of competitive advantage. In the north, of course, we have a lot of sunshine, we have many dams, we have this Lone Dam in Lambula. These are areas that we have to tap. We have some parts of the country where they have other resources like coal, others have got oil and gas and so on. And it is our belief that within the shortest possible time, when we block all the loopholes, all areas where groups of the country are picking money, the big ones and the small ones, I believe we are going to have enough resources in this country. I told you I'm one of those who believe that we have enough. And we don't even need to go and borrow. But as it was pointed out, now in a mess to the extent that we cannot even pay what we earn completely, cannot even service our debt. Then there has to be an arrangement with those lenders to make sure that we have good takeoff, to make sure Nigerians have a good boost. So the issue of flood. You see, many people have made a mistake, and I think there's opportunity to advise Nigerians that so many people are deliberately or ignorantly building in low-lying areas. I am a civil engineer. I have PhD in water engineering. This is an area that I know extremely well. In Kano, we told them that, look, don't build in those areas. In our government 8 years, we took out so many villages and built houses free of charge. Villages in Kano, in local government, including my local government, Abubi, including Makago local government, including Warawa local government, including Kunchi local government, and so on and so forth. We built thousands and thousands of houses for them, and we gave them free of charge, just to move them from valleys where our water is always there during rainy season to create flood. So first of all, the people themselves must take care of themselves. That is one. Secondly, I believe that government must come up with policy. A policy of good housing. Housing that is good enough for all climate and weather. In many villages and towns, especially in this part of the country, are built with mud. This local left right. Now water, just 1 foot, is enough to collapse the whole thing. Now this is a big problem. So in our manifesto or blueprint, we have taken care of all those. Because in Kano, we built houses, as I told you, free of charge in many local governments. Thousands of the houses given free of charge. We built 4 cities in Kano, costing billions of naira. In fact, in my second term, it cost us 35 billion naira to establish those cities. So
thank you for paying attention.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the solution for flood must be comprehensive. It's not something that government alone can do it, but we have taken steps to ensure that every Nigerian lives peacefully without fear of bandits, without fear of other criminals, and without fear of flood. I'm sure my brother Ruben Abati will want me to stop here. Let me stop before you allow me. You ask them again to ring against me. But thank you very much.
Mr. Kola Abiola, candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP.
I will start with the issue of the structural alignment of exchange rate and our economy. Ours is a peculiar situation. It's not about whether, like in 2008, we had a global financial crisis. It's not about Ukraine. It's about bad governance. Bad governance that refuses to have a risk element to our governance and our management of our economy. We have over the years, depending on the foreign exchange from oil, crude oil, but not once has our exchange rate fluctuated with the price of oil, whether it goes up or goes down, it's forever fixed. We have inflation that is probably import driven because we import a lot here today in this country. We have inflation due to crisis in security. We have inflation due to the lack of infrastructure and the lack of processing our produce. All this collectively is what is draining our FX, pushing our inflation, and we have an insatiable appetite for FX because we have no faith in our governance, we have no faith in our leadership, and we don't see a future in both our country. And for those reasons, no matter what the exchange rate is, or matter how high the inflation factor is people are still going to go for the FX because that's only currency that they believe would retain value. That has to be addressed. We have to increase our revenue base by making sure that we stop all theft, all that has been mentioned before. But more importantly, we have to increase our base because presently we have an informal sector that is about 62% of the formal. If we can get that sector into our economy, it will make a huge difference in our revenue base. But we have to start by making a commitment to the people themselves, to show them good governance, to have them trust the governance. Because many of them have gone about their businesses over the years without having to rely on government, period. They've existed. We have an 84% employment from that sector alone that is not even in the formal sector. And how do you bring that sector into to account for taxes and revenue? That is one thing that has to be addressed to realign our economic structure. Like I said earlier on, we have to be sure that we decide the philosophy of our economy, whether it's going to be market-driven or public. When I say market-driven, doesn't necessarily mean you can have a hybrid of some sort. But at least you must use that to create liquidity. And without the liquidity, you will always have the problems we have today. Now, as a party, we have in our manifesto that we will employ and women will be at least 25% of the government at all levels, from the federal to the local government level. But also not about that. We are making an item to protect our daughters, protect our sisters, protect our wives, and protect our mothers. As a matter of fact, we do that because we want to give them an equal opportunity to have a say, not just in governance, but in the economy and livelihoods of their communities. We say that because we want to make sure they're not exploited for the wrong reasons, whether out of religious bias or whether or cultural biases. We will always stand in PRP for the women. And I'm sure a lot of what the Excellency said earlier on, he must have got that from PRP in his days in the party. Because you're very much still a PRP man in all ways, including your colors. No, he didn't learn anything from that, but probably he learned more from PRP. Like you said, as PRP, he did a lot of, as PDP, he did a lot of PRP things. But anyway, so the women are a very key factor in PRP. Boko Haram, IPOP, Yoruba Nation, and so on and so forth. We will speak to every aggrieved party in Nigeria, provided the unity of Nigeria is foremost. That should never be in question. We will speak to you. We understand that you are aggrieved because you are marginalized in every way, be it economic, be it national, but the unity of Nigeria is first and foremost. For as long as we can get through that, I'm sure we can always solve all the problems we have as a country. Transmission lines, where I'm a firm believer that the transmission lines must stay public for national security reasons. That said, we believe in regional transmission, generation, transmission, and distribution at the same time. What we will do is look at the peculiarities of each region and come with a power system, a power mix that provides the most efficient and cost-efficient source to generate. In the north, yes, we have a lot of sunlight. We will use a lot of solar energy. A lot of our rural will use a lot of that because it's probably slightly more expensive, but it's a zero maintenance thing. A lot of the southwest, where you have rivers, we will use that. For hydro, we use gas. Where there's gas, we will use renewable energies as much as we can to make sure we have a balance in our mix. But we're also a firm believer that our oil and gas sector must continue for as long as we have it, but they must meet stringent environmental standards. We have to use what we have, and not go looking for what we don't have. A lot of what we have today, over the years, we have never really added value to our crude, let alone use it to support the growth of our economy. We intend to use and value products and use that to develop as much as possible to bring down the cost of doing business as a whole in the country. Floods. I started my career in Nigeria at Abiola Farms, 1984, 85. And for as long as I can remember, from what was Gogola but now Taraba, to Lafiagi, which is in Kwara State, we've always had floods. The minute you turn up, let the Kanji loose, the Shiroro loose, downstream, there's always floods. But nothing has ever been done to address it. So why are we so surprised that we have that scenario worse in 2022? Well, we have national emergency relief agencies. Every year, right about the same time, your National Meteorological Service gives out a warning, and nothing has ever been done in my years that I've always found, and I know that for a fact. They give out those warnings. The last warning this time was early October, and they gave very severe warnings, but nothing was ever done. Not even your National Disaster Relief Agency had done any and made any preparations to anticipate this. That is wrong, and that is bad leadership. But also, we have inland waterway agencies. We're supposed to be dredging a lot of our rivers. It's never done. The money just goes down the sewage to people's pocket, I guess. But you forget one thing. For as long as we dredge, we not just stop the flood problem, but it's an economic growth for our economy. Inland transportation is a very fundamental part of our transportation infrastructure in this country that nobody has taken advantage of. You will reduce your cost, you will increase economies, you will move your produce, your goods, your raw materials through inland waterways at a very minimal cost. The inland America, the Mississippis and so on, only developed because they dredged the inland waterways. That's why the Mississippi River is so important today in America. They move their produce, they move their grains, they move everything down that river. And we need to learn to do that here also. It's an asset. It is an asset that we need to invest in and make sure that it not just solves a funding problem, but also helps reactivate, re-energize our economy. This is a very touchy one. Federalism, true federalism, genuine federalism, restructuring, call it whatever you want. In PRP we call it true federalism, and it's been on our manifesto for the past 50 years. It's never changed. But what we are not being sincere about is that how much of that can we do with the present constitution we have? We're limited because the present constitution recognizes so many things that don't allow it to happen. We need to address those things to be able to give the regions their rights. We need to look at our land use decrees to make sure that our farmers, no matter how little your parcel is, you have ownership to it, and you own, not just ownership to the land, and have to create wealth, but more importantly, you own everything on top, on the ground, and below it. Then you will see a serious restructuring of the economy in Nigeria. Once you own your asset, you create wealth. In the older big bank in those days, they gave out what we call farmers' loans. We had a 99% payback. 99% payback. And that's because people treasure not to lose their little assets they have. But how do they add value and create wealth when they don't own the papers to that? That will change, especially when we're talking about resource control and minerals, especially up north. thing I was going to mention, and I don't think I have spoken about much here. If we have 18 to 25, the younger population we have is 51%, or 70% actually, in some cases of Nigeria. What are we doing to make sure these people have a future? Growing up, many of us here had bursaries in school. Many of us could travel out with just a school ID card. We didn't need a passport. But today, they haven't felt governments. They haven't felt, not even at the local government level.
Thank you.
We need to address that issue, create jobs, create pride back in Nigeria. Let them be attached to Nigeria. Our parents, my parents went to school abroad and couldn't wait to come back home.
Thank you.
And today, we're all shipping our best brains out. After, as a government, and as a state, and as a country, we have invested enormous amounts of money in these individuals. A lot of your students in the Center abroad, sir, you invested them by state funds. Many of them are going to take that investment and take it somewhere else. The way we're going to lose the best brains we have. And we have actually invested, the state has actually invested in them. And that really troubles me. Because these are the people of the future who have to add value to our country. And if we continue this way, it's not about creating only white collar jobs. There are so many blue collar jobs that are out there that we need to create jobs. And something has to be done about that. So we need to think about that. We have to think about our handicaps, our disabled, and more importantly, as we always say, our women. Something has to be done, and we can do that. I don't have the time to go into the detail, but this is where we stand. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're hoping that we'll be out of here before it's 12 midnight. We've been at it for quite a while with all the drama and the excitement. But at this point, just as we did in the first segment of the program, I would again like to invite our fact checkers. Okay. If we're not going to do any fact checking again this time around. Okay, I just want to remind all of us that after this there will be a group photograph session, with the candidates. The candidates will take a group photograph. They will exchange their pleasantries. And on this note, we would like to thank the candidates who are here present. Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, Dr. Kwankwaso, presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Mr. Kola Abiola, presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, and Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, who has had to stand in for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. We also like to thank the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, and our other partners today, including Premium Times, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, the Nigerian Union of Journalists, the Daily Trust newspapers, the Leadership newspapers, the Guardian newspapers, and the cable newspapers. And also thank all of you, our wonderful audience. In spite of all the drama, we will all agree that this has been truly, a gathering that has been quite interesting, very enlightening. And we've managed to give the candidates an opportunity to interact with the audience and to also project their policy priorities and proposals. And now at this point, I'd like to invite to give the vote of thanks and give his closing remarks, the chairman of this day Arise Group, who has been the chief producer, the executive producer behind all of this. Chairman of this day Arise Group, Prince Unduka Obaide. You have the microphone, sir.
Well, thank you very much. It's 110 days, 8 hours and 10 minutes to election day. Are you ready? The town hall is to help Nigerians understand those applying for leadership. It's the first in a series. It had a flying start, a very robust start. The people who were protesting are now gisting among themselves. And we hope that we'll learn from the experience and do better next time. We will invite other candidates to the series on security and the economy. And after that, we'll do our series on education, healthcare, and social services. So the town hall meetings will continue every Sunday for a while. So we thank all of you for spending time and for coming. We thank our audiences from all over the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
And with that, we've come to the end of this first edition of the Arise News Presidential Town Hall Series. Thank you very much. Now, group photograph of the candidates. Chairman, please join the candidates.